Okay, so we're going to talk today about Bootstrap layouts. Okay, so it's a really actually a super cool, easy way to do layout. You can very rapidly deploy websites. So can everyone see my screen? Okay, you can all see the bright space. Great. All right. So before I get into anything started, just about the announcement. So I know everyone got their grades. There was some really great work, guys. I was really impressed with the quality of work on the midterms. I apologize it took me so long to get them graded. I really wanted to get them graded earlier. It's just I had so much coming this week. Pardon me. So much coming this week. So somebody in this class told everyone else, I don't know how it worked, but my assumption is that somebody posted or somebody said something, but so many people in this class just decided to have a different style sheet for every web page. I can't wrap my head around where you think that would be okay. If you had just for example, like the Algonquin College website, and there was like a one style sheet for every page, that would be absolutely non-maintainable, right? Like it wouldn't be something that anybody could maintain. You'd have to be some sort of a cranial octopus or something. Like, there's no way you could maintain all of that if you had to change one color or something. So that's why many times we've gone over why the importance of why style sheets, like an external style sheet it controls everything. Otherwise, there's no sense in having an external style sheet. It goes all the way back to the basics of Cascade. So, guys, you can't do that, right? It's one style sheet for one website. With the exception to that would be if you had, for example, a reset or something else that goes to the side. Just as an aside, guys, if you have 5 pages and you have 5 style sheets, it takes me 5 times as long to grade assignments. That doesn't do you any good. It certainly doesn't do me any good. A happy grader is a happy going to give you happy grades. So let's just keep it all in one style sheet, okay, in the future, because it is absolutely not best practices to use multiple style sheets. There are times in production for templates and different things like that, but usually you break apart things like a footer or the navigation or something along those lines, but not the main layout of the page. It shouldn't have its own style sheet. Everything goes into one style sheet because we want to keep consistency, right? If you have an H1, that H1 is going to look the same across all websites. If you have to change the H1, then you shouldn't have to change 5 or 500 style sheets, right? That doesn't make any sense. So please don't do that. One website should have one style sheet. Just makes a lot more sense and keeps things maintainable. And in terms of education setting, it just makes it gradable for me, right? Okay, so let's take a look at the rest of actually, before we do that, is there any questions about that? Do you guys understand where I'm coming from? Does that make sense to you? Just kind of be critical about the advice you received. I mean, there's just the other group didn't there was no issues with that at all. This group was like 50% of you. So I'm not sure, somebody must have said something or posted something or whatever. Just be critical about what you're hearing or how you're getting information. If it sounds like it doesn't make sense, chances are it doesn't make sense. You can always send me an email, and if I clarify, then maybe that's a better thing to post out. There is no easy way around things. Sometimes you just have to get the work done. So, okay. So let's talk about the rest of this course, which is pretty simple. We are here on week 11, Wednesday, July 21st. Bootstrap layouts, and we'll talk about what we're actually this week. We have a in-class exercise we're going to do that towards the last hour. I'm going to even give you time to submit it today, so do it before midnight tonight. So you'll have we're going to do it all just the same way on CodePen, no problem. You'll just submit a link. I'll even give you time to do that. We have an exercise coming out. This exercise is a one-page website built using WordPress. You're going to see how easy that is. This should be about a 2-hour assignment in total. It's not a big assignment. It just shows me you know how to use Bootstrap layouts. We're going to talk about today, and it's due in 2 weeks. Okay, at the end of class, because that's a work lab, so it'll be due at the end of class. So 4 o'clock on August the 4th. Starting next week, we have work labs for the next 3 classes. Okay, the next 3 weeks we have work labs. That's 4, 8, 12 hours of work labs. The next 2 classes, those are mandatory work labs. That means you have to be here, okay? I don't mind if you show up a few minutes late or whatever. Like, I mean, it's the work labs. I get it. Okay. Unless you have submitted your assignment, you are required to be here. Now, that doesn't mean I can go in and grab you by the ear and drag you down here. It doesn't mean that you can't, if you have an appointment you need to get to or whatever. I understand, but the reasoning for this is because there's going to be there should be at this point a lot of questions about your final. This isn't working. I don't understand why that, or how do you get this done, or can we troubleshoot this, or those types of things. If we don't have work labs, then my email gets absolutely destroyed with questions. So I have work labs and they're mandatory. You can come, if you're going to be working on it anyway, you might as well be here working on it. And then you have access to somebody who can help you and you can feed into the process, right? So take control of that assignment. I want you guys to put together the best possible assignment so you can get the best possible grade. This is an opportunity for you to do that. There's no teaching or anything going on. This is just for you guys to work. So I need you guys to show up for that. Even if you don't have questions, you're still here. As an extra little aside, we still have a work 2.5% grade item. Okay, this P4. That is being moved down to one of these 2 days. At one of those 2 days at random, I'm going to release it as an in-class exercise. So if you don't care about 2.5%, that's fine. If you do care about 2.5%, for some of you, that could move you into or out of a letter grade. Okay, so that's something to be aware of. 2.5% is not a huge amount, but it's enough to shift someone's letter grade. Okay, even if as a plus or a minus or something like that. So just be aware that that's coming up, and I won't be talking about the details of that until or what day it'll be released. So it'll happen. Okay. So that's something to be aware of as well. And then finally, anybody who doesn't show up to these work labs without good reason, okay, anyone who doesn't show up to these work labs, I just want to answer your questions. Okay, if you don't need my help, no problem. I won't give it to you. That's a pretty simple philosophy. If you don't need the help, fine, don't show, no problem. Don't worry, you can miss out in 2.5%. And then right here, when everything's due, if you have questions that week, it doesn't work. Oh, well, I guess you should have been to work lab. We could figure that out together, right? I think that's a realistic response to this. This is class time that we're giving away to you guys. So rather, this is a fairly straightforward semester, or end of the semester. So please take advantage of that. All the tools are in place. I will be here as soon as if people don't show up or the classroom is empty, everyone bails out ahead of time, I'm just going to close the work lab. But make sure you guys are here for that. Is there any questions about that, or do you guys understand, why we want to have that? That's for you guys as a benefit, right? I don't want to seem like I'm harsh, but I think it's important that you guys have the work lab time. It's a final. It's your last chance to put forward a really good grade. So with that said, the final is due at the end of the August 11th. Okay, that at the end of the week. So it'll be due here on the 13th. Okay, that's where your final is due by midnight. And then if you notice, well, everything breaks. If you'll notice, you have 1 week left over. This is assessment week where pretty much all of your other assignments should be due, or many of your other assignments. That way, the big coding one is out of the way. You don't have to worry about it. It will have been handed in. With that said, this is for me to grade. Okay, so there's no late submissions for this. Get it in on time, get in whatever you have. Please, guys, don't be late. Once you submit it, do not change it. Okay, do not change it whatsoever. Okay, I've said this time and time again. Don't change it. If you change it, I have nothing to verify against. And if there's something wrong, I can't go back on it, and I won't, because it's not my job. I'm telling you now. I'm telling you now again. Don't change an assignment once you've submitted it. Okay, that only makes sense. So that's that. I think that's what we have. That's what it looks like going forward. So we have today we're going 2.5%. The assignment is worth 10%, so that's 12.5%. And then we have an additional 25. So that puts us at 37.5%. So guys, almost 40% of your grade is available starting this week. So, I mean, there's still lots of opportunity to do well. You just need to put your best foot forward, make use of the work lab, ask questions if you have them. And, there's still a really good opportunity to get a lot of grade. Okay. Is there any questions about what the semester looks like and what the next classes or anything like that? Do we have any questions at all? Okay, you guys ready to get into Bootstrap? This is one of my favorite things. You guys, look, you guys have shown me you know Flexbox. You show me you've known Grid. I think you guys have done exceptional, really well. But it's been my pleasure to teach you guys through this course this semester. I've really enjoyed it, and I just watching you guys grow has been awesome. You guys have you really should pat yourselves in the back. So with that said, I know you know how to do this stuff now. So now we're going to learn Bootstrap. We're going to take all of that away. We are going to make really cool, complex, responsive layouts without even touching CSS, because that's what Bootstrap does. So let's move right into it. So I'm going to, we could just go down to week 11 down here, and I'm going to up the recording later. Don't worry about these guys here. I keep them there for my reference. You shouldn't be able to see them. You can scoot over to the IMDAC, and you'll see, let's see, week 10. Oops, week 10. Yeah, Bootstrap layouts. Okay, there's some information here if you want to refer to it later. Bootstrap nav and nav bars. I'll talk about this later because I'm only technically going to do one of the slideshows. I want to focus my attention on the Bootstrap layout. I think that is the grid system. It's absolutely critical. You need to understand that. The nav bars is going to be kind of homework. You just there's a slideshow here. You can watch the recording. It just talks about how the slideshow is put together, but largely I imagine most of you will not care and you will copy and paste anyway. This will have some explanation about it, so at least you can make some modifications. I would rather focus my time and attention this time on the grid. Just makes sense. You'll see why. Okay, there are the hanging by your bootstraps is the in-class we're going to do today. The bootstrap, this is the assignment that's due in 2 weeks, and the web portfolio is just the assignment that's due in 4 weeks, the final assignment. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to start with slideshow number 15, and we'll kind of get the ball rolling. So again, we're going to talk about Bootstrap Grid, and we're going to do the hanging by your bootstraps assignment. We're going to do it together using CodePen. I'll give you time to submit it in class so that it's done and out of the way. Before we get going, are there any questions, comments, or concerns that are not related to the midterm assignment that I graded and I handed back to you? Anything about going forward or this class or anything like that? No? Okay. All right, let's get into Bootstrap Grid. So we talked about before about Bootstrap Grid, how it is. Let me make sure I'm recording. Yeah, good. We talked about Bootstrap Grid and how it was developed by Twitter to keep everything consistent, right? One big, did I show you guys what it looked like, how big that style sheet was? Did I not show you that? Let's go and see.
I think you did.
Yeah, I'm going to pull it up right now just so we can kind of be on the same page. I'll show you guys here. I'm going to go to get started. We'll just take a look and see what it looks like here. Here's the link to it. Let's just take a look. If I go ahead and view it this way, and I can see this, this is pretty big, but this is what they call minimized. Okay, they've removed all. I can't even look at that. That's all the white space is removed. So I'm just going to go up to the URL. I can see bootstrap.min.css. I'm going to get rid of the .min, so it just says bootstrap.css, and all the formatting is back. Let's just go down and see. These are all classes that we have access to. Still going, right? We have access to all these things. They're all pre-written for us. Okay, so it's a framework. It's already in place, so that we can make, so that we can just, once we know the classes, we can build out these structures and have access to the alerts and the buttons and all those cool things. But you see, this is not a small amount of code that we have access to. It's very well fully featured, right? And this allowed, by having this in place, it allowed the employees at Twitter to take all their web properties, right, and make them consistent. And the real core of it, it started out as a mobile first, responsive, Flexbox-based grid system. That's how it started out. And then, of course, they started adding on components to what they call a kind of a material library. So they said, oh, well, we need to have lists. Okay, well, this is what all of our lists should look like. Well, we want to have forms. Well, this is what all of our forms should look like. And then it allowed everything to have a consistent, unified appearance. It allowed for rapid development so that the developers in any Twitter project could just go to the library of code. They could say, oh, I go over here, I need to get a form. So they could say, I want a form. And then they could just start, they could just grab the code, and then they could ostensibly just make the changes pretty easily. That way, everything is consistent. Okay, That goes back again to just the idea of one style sheet controlling everything. And this way, everything was unified across the Twitter platform. And it was super popular. It changed everything, right? So anyway, so we're back with grid. The grid, they released it to the public, and then this Bootstrap grid became super important. The idea of a grid system is not new. They used it in a print layout for a long time. So let's take a look at what a 12-column grid. Actually, I'll look up Bootstrap grid system. It's based on a 12-column grid. I'm going to see if I can find the one I was looking at yesterday. Here we go. Oops, I want to open the image just to take a look at that. Oh, that's a broken one. Hang on a minute, guys. Let me find what I was looking at. Here we go. That's what I was looking at. There we go. Okay. This is what the grid system looks like, right? Imagine that we have the whole, this is a website, and across the content area, we have a wrapper, right? Everyone knows what I mean by a wrapper. It's got a fixed width area and it's centered on the page. Okay. So this is a page with a purple background, and the left edge of the 1 and the right edge of the 12 was where the container was. What it does is it puts these columns with what we call gutters in between them, spacing. Okay. And they're made, we use padding, but made using padding, but we have 12 columns. Okay. And then we can stretch out our grid to take up what we need. Now, so let's just say, for example, we wanted to have 2 equal width columns. Okay. We would say, make a class for the 2 divs would be a class. The first one would be a class with col-6, col-6, like 6 columns. And the next one would be col-6. So we would have 2 divs, each with a class of col-6. And that would say we would have a 6 span column and a 6 span column. So as long as the numbers add up to 12, we can have that very easily. Now, if we wanted to have kind of a sidebar over on the right-hand side, we could say col-8 for the first div, and the second one would be col-4. So we use 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. It's that simple, guys. We're just breaking it down into 12. The reason they use 12 is because it's so easily divisible into smaller numbers. So it's a nice, easy system to work with. But that's the crux of any grid system. And think about what a newspaper layout. And everyone's seen what a newspaper is, and it's very much in columns, right? That's where this system really got its start. Okay, the idea of using a grid system to lay out these columns. And that way, it's nice and even and consistent. The human eye loves patterns, right? The brain loves patterns. The Fibonacci sequence, or the rule of thirds, the golden ratio. We love patterns, and our brains are, smart. Where they're smart enough, right? We're all smart enough to be able to calculate these patterns in our brain and see that we're looking at that. And this just allows that to happen very nicely. Now, having seen this grid system, let's go take a look at the Algonquin College website really quickly. And you can tell me if you think this is built on a grid system. Remember, guys, all even numbers. Look at 4, 4, 4, right? You're starting to see a pattern. Think about your favorite website, right? That works pretty well. There's so many opportunities. Everything is built on grid systems. I'm going to show you. How about the website I built over here? Everything is following a certain very clean pattern that goes down. To me, each one of these rows, okay, this is a row. This is a row here, and then this welcome part is a row. The featured projects is a row. You can see that. But every row has a certain amount of columns inside that is all just really broken up into this grid system. Think about, what's your favorite website? What about, let me see, CSStricks.com. Okay. Everything is broken up into these grids. Almost every website uses a grid system. Some of them are very clever in how they break things out of boxes so it doesn't look like it, but realistically, 3, 3, 3, 3. And in this case, they're just adding up to 12, right? In our case, there's different grid systems that do different things. Okay, but does that help? Can you kind of see how this comes together? Does that kind of make sense to you guys? Excellent. Thank you for the feedback. I really appreciate that, guys. So this whole idea, as long as you can count to 12, or as long as you can kind of divide 12 into a certain amount of numbers, it becomes pretty easy, and you can have whatever you want to. Now, the beauty about that we're going to find later into with these columns is that we can say, well, I want to have 6 grids when it's at a small breakpoint, but I want to have, 6 columns, but I want to be 8 columns when I'm medium, and I want it to be 3 columns when it's large. We can do that just with classes, and we saw that a little bit in the previous class. So this is really powerful, and it's all built on Flexbox. So we can just say, you could have 45 divs and they all have a class of col, .col, and it'll have 45 equally spaced boxes because it's going to do the flex thing. It's just going to put everything in row. So there's a certain structure we want to build out. Okay, and we can do that. But that's really what this looks at. The grid system uses a 12 column. The Bootstrap grid uses a 12 column grid system that is made up of, containers, rows, and columns. And we'll look at those in a second. Pardon me again, guys. Boy, oh boy. Containers, rows, and columns. Okay, we're going to look at each one of those going forward. And there's certain specific classes that you want to use for each part. So there's a very rigid structure you have to use. Okay, and I'm going to beat it into your head over the next little while what that looks like and why. And then hopefully you'll understand. The same way that we all understand responsive image code, we know that max width is there for a reason. It's not width because width is intrinsic. When you say it, it's 1 meter wide, it has to be 1 meter. If we say up to a meter or up to a maximum of 1 meter, then that implies some flexibility. And it's the same thing here. I'm going to beat that into your head why containers, rows, and columns are important to use in a certain order. Okay, and specific classes. Then, of course, there's all kinds of opportunity for us to use flexy kind of language, ordering, offsets, whatever, but we can use all that. So let's get into it and take a look and start with containers. The outermost piece of code or piece of structure in the Bootstrap grid is the container. And a container is really just a wrapper. Now, in the past, in our site, I've used wrappers all the time. So you should kind of know what a wrapper is. What does a wrapper do? Does anybody want to, and please don't start talking about Tupac or something, but what does a wrapper do in the terms of the design and the work that we've done in this class already, right? I've used a div with a class of wrapper. Does anybody feel like they want to tackle that? What have we used a wrapper to do? What's a couple of the key elements?
To set our maximum width, maybe.
Pardon me?
To set our maximum widths.
Yeah. That's a good indication. We use a wrapper to to put a width into all of our content into a container and then center it. Right. And we can actually use this picture for an example. Like if this was all of our content, all these columns, it would say, okay, well, the container width or the wrapper width is say 500 pixels or whatever breakpoint you're at, and then margin auto, right? Does everybody know what I mean? We've used that before, right? And that's what that's what the container does. The container basically sets up one of 5 different breakpoints that is built into Bootstrap. Okay, it has built-in breakpoints, and it'll set up that. So once we hit, say, I think the first one would be 568 pixels. So once we hit 568 pixels, then the container will set to a width of 568 pixels with a margin of auto. And once we hit the next one, we'll say 768. Once we hit 768 pixels, the container will hit a width of 768 pixels and will margin auto. So it's just basically setting up the width for that, so that we end up with this nice kind of, this nice kind of visual idea of something being centered in the middle. And we always know exactly what we can design. We say, well, I want to design it for medium, no problem. We know it's, say, 768 pixels. We can open up our Photoshop or our prototyping tool, make a nice 768 pixel panel and start working inside of that. It allows us control of the design all over the place. Okay, so that's what the container does. So we always start with a container. We can have numerous amounts of containers. So we can have a website that has 25 containers if we need to. That's fine. 100 containers, 1 million containers. We can have as many as we want to. But that is the outermost, for one section, that is the outermost structural element. Okay, there's a few ways we can do that. We can use container. That basically does this this fixed width idea with centering around it. Okay. Oh my gosh. But we can also say container fluid, and that'll basically say, instead of having a max width on it like we would do here, it's going to go 100% width. So the idea with Bootstrap is that all these columns inside are based on percentages. So this one, out of 12, there was some math that was figured out that each one of these is going to be a certain percentage of 100, right? So this will be, 1/12 of a percent, or I don't know how, I don't want to try and figure out the math, but that's it would figure out that, including what the gutters might be. And so the container is a fixed width, right? And so the columns will always fit nicely inside of a fixed width container. It's pixels, X amount of pixels, and everything inside is percentage based. But we can say container fluid, and that makes the container go all the way to the left side of the screen and the right side of the screen. So the container becomes 100% as well as the columns inside. So that, oh boy. So that's, maybe you want to have that for whatever reason, that's a possibility. Or we have this idea of breakpoint, and we can say, I want the container to, be 100% up until a specified breakpoint is what we said here. So basically, if we're saying that all of these containers are divs, for example, that is a block level element. Did you guys cover in responsive web 1, did you talk about the difference between block level elements and inline elements a bit? All you really need to know is that block level elements are 100% width by default, right? Things like divs, nav tags, footer, those are, paragraph, those are things that are block level, and they're 100% width by default. So using this kind of an idea, container dash breakpoint, and I'll talk about that a bit more, we can say that the width is 100% because that's the default of block level element, right? If this is all these columns are inside of a div, and a div is 100% by default, what we can say is that we want to be 100%, which is great for mobile breakpoints, up until we hit, say, this SM for small, or MD for medium, or LG for large, or whatever, container dash LG, large, then it'll be 100%. When we hit that large breakpoint, or that MD, or whatever it is we decide to use here, then it will go to that particular fixed width. And we can always figure that out. We can always look at Get Bootstrap, go to the documentation, and we can say, what are the breakpoints? And it'll tell us what they are right here. So for example, if I said container dash MD, okay, there's my point right there. It means from 768 and beyond. So what I'm saying here is that I want to be 100% width, so it's going to take up the whole screen, just like I always talk about with a mobile. If I grab this and make it as small as possible, it looks like a mobile phone, which really doesn't have any columns. It's all the way across the screen. That's what it'll do. And then we add this container dash MD. Once we hit MD, which is 768 pixels, then the container will, instead of being all the way across, it will lock to 768 pixels and be centered. So that allows us we can actually set the container to have different sizes. It's really powerful. Okay, so do you guys see what I mean by that? Does that make sense? We're gonna have demonstrations of this. I'm just giving you some verbal. This is the lecture part. Okay, so that's a container. So pardon me, every Bootstrap content structural grid piece starts with a container. Inside of every container, we have to have a row. Okay, it can be one row, it can be 100 rows, it can be however many rows you need. If we look at the Algonquin College website, we can see, for example, here is a row. A row is X to Y. It's all the way across. So we have a row here. Here we have a row with a little ticker in it. Here is a slideshow row. Here we have the row with we'll say it's a div with a class of row, and it's for exploring. This is a div with a class of row that would be for news. Okay, it's what it is. It's just a new thought, right? It's a new section. Okay, that can have multiple columns inside. So we see that the container houses the all the content. In this case, it's a fixed width container. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is a column of 4, a column of 4, and a column of 4. And then it's in its own row, because then I can give that row, for example, as a green wavy background. Okay, it's got a different layout than what's in here. You see how it all kind of comes together? It all has this really very important structural idea we have to do. The idea of a row, it really comes down to, when you talked about floats, it's kind of a clear fix. Okay, everything with floats in it goes inside of this clear fix, and then we can move on to a different set of layout underneath. It causes everything to be nice and clean. And this whole system will cease to work if you do not have a row inside of a container. You have to have a container with a row, and then inside the row, we would put our columns, right? They put all your content inside the columns, okay? And we can use it just by saying .col, okay, or .col-6. That would take up 6 of the 12 columns, or .col-1. We could have up to 12 of those col-1s. It's a 12 column grid system. And then by default, all columns are laid out with equal width. If we just say .col and we have 5 of them, then we'll end up with 5 equal width columns across the container that we have set up. Okay, so container, row, column. They always we have to have that. We can have multiple columns instead of rows, and we can have multiple rows inside of containers, and we can have multiple containers on the page. So we can end up with a nice robust setup like this. Does that make sense, guys, when you start talking about how that works? And you can see it in action right here. Almost think of any site. Open a browser right now, go to any site. Almost every site will be using some sort of a grid system to lay out. Any good site, really. Right? Some sites are just thrown together with whatever code or any numbers, random numbers. This doesn't really account for random numbers, right? It's all set. Okay, so that's what it looks like, and it's important to note. So let's just take a look at the code. A container to start with, okay? A class of row, because again, we can have multiple rows inside the container. And in this case, we have 3 equal width columns. So 1, 2, and 3. It's just saying, it's because it's all flexbox based. All it's saying here is equal width columns. Anything with a class of column, just make it equal widths. If we added another column, another div with a class of column in here, then it would go from 4 columns each, because 4 times 3 is 12, to 3, right? It'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 3 times 4 is 12. Again, we're just divisible by 12. It becomes very easy to use. Yes, it has a lot of extra HTML, for sure. But once you get used to it, and if you're using something like Emmet in your Visual Studio Code, div.container, div.container, hit tab, div.row, hit tab, div.col, hit tab, div.col, hit tab, div.col, hit tab. Done. That's it. And so without doing any CSS or anything, we've already started building structure out. And by the way, it's fully responsive. Okay, but that's the structure. Does that make sense, guys? You see how it looks and goes together? Okay, great. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the feedback. There's a few of you that are pretty regular with it. That's great. I'm assuming probably about 25% of you aren't actually here right now. That's okay. But this is important stuff. We need to know how to do this. So there's a couple of options we can do within the grid. And I'm going to talk about this, and then I imagine we'll take a break here shortly. But we can do a couple of options. So now we've seen how we use equal column, but equal columns doesn't always work. Sometimes for the Algonquin College website, that's pretty great. You know, it works out well. But then we get to things like this, where we have offsets or in non-equal columns, right? And things we want to do a little bit separately. Maybe down here we can see this logo is bigger than these guys. Okay, we have extra space, right? So we do have some options we can play with. Okay, so we don't always want to have equal. We could say the column with a certain amount of numbers. So we could specify it. We can say I want it to be this many column, this many of the 12. Right? Or we can say, I want it to be equal numbers, but only at a certain breakpoint. Just like container, I can say, I want these columns to be 100% width until we get to a certain breakpoint, in which case then they'll break into this, right? So it'll be 100% width. It might make sense to say, I want the container dash MD for medium. So it would be 100% width until we hit a medium breakpoint, in which case it'll be fixed width. And be the same thing with the columns. We want them all inside the container to be 100% width until we hit medium. And then they'll start breaking into these nice equal break points, right? We do that the same way. Col dash MD. We can also use align or justify to move our content or our columns around inside the breakpoint. So it's very much like Flexbox. If you're confused about any of these things, guys, go back and review the slides for Flexbox. Go watch a video on YouTube. There's so many tutorials out there to remind you guys. Okay, but it uses a Flexbox terminology, so we can pretty comfortably use it. Let's see what this looks like. Or no, sorry, we add a bit more. We can actually, we can adjust and we can tell it exactly how many rows we want to have. So that's important. If we wanted to have if we wanted to break up 4 items across 2 rows, we could say row calls 2. So it'll say there's gonna be 2 rows that are going to house all the columns, right? We want how many rows are going to house the columns. There's going to be 2. We can offset. Again, we see that here. This is an offset. Okay, it's all the way to the side. This might be, if this is 4, this is probably 5, and then we offset it. So if this is 5 here, we say 12 minus 5, and that's how big the offset is. So in this case, 7, right? 7 plus 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so out of the 12, we have this takes up 5 of those columns, and then we offset by 7. We want it pushed over by 7 columns. That's what an offset does. Okay. So we can do that. We can change all the ordering. We can say order dash number, or we can say order first or order last. Okay, so the ordering is just if we want to move things around. We'll see that again in action later. So we have a lot of options we can do, and they're all largely based on things that we see inside of Flex. So let's see what it looks like. So in the last example, we had equal columns. There was, in this case, there was 3. So they were each taking up 4, right? It was 12 divided. There's 3 columns. It's 12 divided by 3. Each one takes up 4 of the available columns. Okay, that probably, I hope that makes sense. When we get down to the more advanced options, again, we have a container with a row inside and then a series of divs that have columns. And we're able to control pretty nicely. The first one we said we definitely want it to be 6, and the next one we want it to be 6. But then after that, these following 2 columns, right? We want the number 3 one to be, it's going to be 4 of the available columns. So the leftover is 8, right? And then we could say we want it to be all of the columns. That's 12. We could tell it to be all of them. So we can be very specific in the numbers we give out, right? If we wanted to, we can say we want to justify the content center. Remember our Flexbox, when we use text justify or justify, it means on the x-axis, so across the left to right. So we can tell it to justify to the center. So in this case, we have a 9 column centered, okay, inside the row. The row is actually, all the content in the row is centered. And the same thing with a 6. This is great as long as we don't have less than, if these start coming up under 12, then we can have some issues, right? We'll talk about another option to do this. There's several different ways to accomplish this, but we could justify our content to the center, and that's quite nice to know. We can again specify how many ways how we want these to break up into our rows as well as column. Rows are going to be this way here, right? So in this case, we say we have 4 elements and we want them to break in across 2. That'll allow us a little bit more control over how these are going to appear. Just about anything we see here can use this LG, MD, like these breakpoints as well. Okay, they're all over the place. They're called grid tiers, but we can use these grid tiers all over the place. So this is no exception. If we want this, only want to break this down in different breakpoints, so no problem at all. We could do that. Offset. So this is another way to achieve centering, as we can see here from number 2. So in the first case, we said we want to have, again, it's just numbers of 12. 8 plus 4 is 12. So in this case, we have an 8 column grid. Okay, it takes up 8 columns, and the offset means push it over by, and then 4. So that equals 12. It's going to push it all the way to the end. In the second instance, it says it's a 6 column grid. That leaves us out of 12 minus 6 is 6, right? So it means we have 6 remaining left over, and we want to put them in even side. If we want to center it, then we have to just cut that number in half so they're equal on either side. 3 plus 3 is 6. So 3 on this side and 3 on this side. That gives us 3. There are 2 sides that are equal to 6, and our column is actually equal to 6. That's a total of 12. That gives us a certain amount of centering as well. Okay, so we could do offsets. And our ordering. Okay, this is I think the last thing we'll talk about before we take our break, and then we'll come back and we'll get hands-on. We're just going to experiment with it and play. But again, we can change the ordering should we need to do that. And it's pretty straightforward. In this case, we're using order last and order first. Those take precedence over any numeric ordering. So if we say order -1, order -1 will always come after order -first. If we don't want to use first and last or anything, we could just say order -1. Here's order 1, order 2, order 3, order -4, and order -5. We could change all those numbers according to what we need. So there's lots that we can do within it. It can be as simple as just saying, I want to have equal columns, right? Or we can get into complex offsets or even ordering them, okay? Or any variation thereof. We can use column numbers with order last, with offset, right? All of these things are available to us to use as long as we're following this container, row, column structure. Once again, we can have as many columns as we want to, as long as those columns are inside of a row. We can have as many rows inside the container as we want to, as long as they're inside a container, and the web page can have as many containers as you need. Now, having said all this, we are going to break into a hands-on session, okay, after our break. But does this all kind of make sense? I know it's a little overwhelming right now, but when we get into it and start playing with it, starts to make a little bit of sense. You can see how this can become really powerful and easy to lay things out. Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll set up a little environment to play around in. The next hour, I'm going to go through just playing with this. Okay, the hour after that, I'm going to give you guys a challenge. So you guys are going to be on your own doing a little bit of a challenge. And then in the final hour, we are going to do the in-class assignment, which I'm going to give you time to hand in, and we're going to talk about that final assignment as well, which is really just creating a web page using this type of a system. Okay, one single web page. It's not even you're not even going to have any CSS. There's no design to worry about. It's purely a layout thing. Okay, so let's take a break. I'm going to set a 15-minute timer. 15-minute timer, and I'll see you guys when that clock runs down. All right. Hey guys, we're back. Okay, we had a couple of people sneak in there on the in the break. Guys, we are talking about Bootstrap Grid. I'm not going to go back over what all it means, but you are definitely going to want to go back and and watch the beginning part of this lesson, and maybe try and get in on time next time we have classes or something. So it's all very important stuff. There is going to be an in-class assignment as well as a regular assignment, and it could very well affect your final too. So this is important stuff that you would have missed. So make sure you check that out. Okay, so we've talked about what all the different things we can do with it. So what we're going to do is set up with Bootstrap Grid. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a kind of just a test platform, and we'll get going with just playing around with it. So I'm just going to minimize that a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up you probably want to go to wherever you have all your web files set up somewhere. I'm just going to use my desktop for the time being, just so we have it, just so we can see kind of visually what I'm doing. I'm going to find so again, for you, we're going to set up our demo wherever it is that you keep all your website files. We're going to start with a folder, and I'm going to call this bootstrap-demo. Again, guys, just like we learned in responsive web 1, we never use capitals, we never use spaces. If it's going to be for a website, there is never a time that you'll want to use capitals or spaces, right? That's just the way it goes. So we've got this structure set up here. This folder set up here. I'm going to open up my Visual Studio Code, which we can see I have nothing in here. If you have the File Explorer and you have a whole bunch of folders and stuff in here, maybe you love that. That's great. I certainly don't. What I would do is I would just go to File, and I would say Close Folder, and that'll just close out all the little folders you have in the side window. Okay, just do that until they're all closed. If you like them in there, then hey, you know what? Go to town. And once it's empty, I will grab my working folder and just drag it in to the screen so I can see Bootstrap demo on the left-hand side. This is important to do because I can't use the live editor without that, right? I can't have an index.html on my desktop and drag it in and use a live editor. It has to be inside of a folder. Right. And as for all, because I know everybody watched that video I had called URL linking that explained the difference between like 127.0, all the live share and stuff like that. It's important to know the live share just makes things a lot easier to work with. So hopefully you guys are following my advice on that. So I'm going to put the Bootstrap demo folder I just created. I'm just going to drag that into my Visual Studio Code. Okay, so again, just create the folder and then put it inside your Visual Studio Code. And then when inside here, we should see in the Explorer window, we should see open editors, and I should see the Bootstrap demo right there. There's a couple of icons, and one of them is going to be for create a new file. So I'm going to click that, and I'm going to call it index.html and hit enter. Okay, we see over here, sure enough, Bootstrap demo, there's index.html. Okay, now I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about putting in a style sheet right now. I'm not going to do anything like that quite yet. I might add one later just for some basic colors, but I'm okay right now. But let's get this set up real basic. I'm going to start by putting a basic structure in here. We know that if I go to getbootstrap.com, I'll just show you what I mean here. I know that if I go to getbootstrap.com, and if I go to get started, I could just go to the intro and go down to the starter template, copy and put that in. But I'll show you a different method of doing that because sometimes you have an existing structure you already want to use. So I'm going to start by just putting exclamation mark and hit tab, and that will allow Amit to create the basics. And in the title here, I always want to have a title. Please don't submit anything to me, especially for the final that just says document or doesn't have a title. If it doesn't have a title, I mean, it's a website, especially a final. Pay attention to those details, right? So make sure we always have a document title in there. In this case, I'm just going to call it Bootstrap Basics or Bootstrap Demo. All right. So again, I just, inside my index, I just hit tab, and then I make sure that I have the title, something that makes sense. In this case, Bootstrap Demo is fine. Make sure you save it. And let's go ahead back to our getbootstrap.com. I'm going to get you guys linked up here really quickly. It's just getbootstrap.com, but I'm going to link it up in the chat for you guys so you have access to it quickly if you want it. And once we're there, I can very easily just, again, making sure that I'm using version 5.0.2, not any other version. I'm going to click the get started. Now, in the past, we've used the starter template. Well, we already created an HTML doc type and a head and all that. We've already done all that inside of here, right? So sometimes you'll already have an existing structure that you want to use because maybe there's some extra meta in there, whatever. So in this case, all we want to do is add the required there's CSS and JavaScript in there. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Once we're at the introduction part, which is really just get started, it starts on the introduction. And if I scroll down a little bit, we'll see there's some CSS and there's some JavaScript. So I'm going to start with the CSS. Where do we always put CSS?
In the head.
The document title.
Well, it can be anywhere in the head, actually.
Okay.
As long as it's in the head, it doesn't matter. In this case, I'll put it underneath the document title, but we can put anywhere inside the head tags. I wouldn't put a link in the body. I'm just going to actually hit word wrap. If you want word wrapping, it's just under view, word wrap. And I would never put it in the body. That wouldn't make sense. So in my case, I'm going to put it in the head, okay, underneath title. But it doesn't matter where in the head you put it. The only thing that does matter is that if I wanted to have a style sheet of my own, I would put that after Bootstrap. I wouldn't put it before because Bootstrap has a reset built in. So if I put my own style sheet here, then Bootstrap could very well override all the hard work I did. So I always want to put it after. That way I can override Bootstrap if I need to, because I want control. I want my own style.css to control Bootstrap, not the other way around. Okay, so that's really important, guys. The very last thing before the closing head tag as far as style sheets should be your own style sheet. Okay, if it's a Google font or any other .css file, then you're doing it the wrong way, really. You want to have control. Remember that cascade. Okay, so I've got my link, my style sheet linked in the head. Now comes the weird part because we haven't talked about JavaScript, and I'm not going to go too far down this rabbit hole. But here we have a couple of options. JavaScript for Bootstrap uses two components. It uses what we call Popper, and it has its own set of JavaScript. We could load both these. Popper is for like pop-ups and popovers and tool tips and things like that. That's a pop-up, a popover, right? So when I hover it, little icon says like a speech bubble comes up. That's a pop. That's what the Popper is used for. And it's just one of the features that's available. In this case, we have an option for a bundled version, which is right here. So I'm just going to take the bundle. I'm going to copy that. Now, JavaScript in most circumstances, you're going to learn more about this when you come into Web Development 3, intro to JavaScript, which is now we've renamed to Web Development 3. But JavaScript, as you will learn, will always go, or almost always go, right before the closing body tag. And I'll explain why. I'm just going to paste it in. Right? Make sure it's the bundle. It'll say bundle in it. Right? And .min is fine. It's just minimized. We want the bundle. Okay. If you're like, whoops, you grabbed the wrong one, just go back here and grab the bundle. You notice it says Popper and Bootstrap. It doesn't say bundle in either of those. This one says bundle. You want them both. Okay. Now, the reason that we put we put JavaScript, just very quickly, but the reason that we put JavaScript before the closing body tag and not in the head is because the purpose of JavaScript, and you're going to learn this in level 3, but the purpose of JavaScript is because it's a front end code. It manipulates HTML. It uses the DOM, which is basically it knows the parent-child, grandchild relationship, and it uses that structure, okay, and the cascade to actually find where you are in the code and manipulate things. You can add stuff into the HTML. You can show and hide divs. It does all those things seamlessly. We see that all the time. Here's an example right here. Show and hide, move up, move down. Okay, that's what it's doing. It's manipulating the HTML so that in this case, it's just sliding the content up and doing display none on the div. So it's actually using some trickery to achieve that, manipulating the HTML. But in order to manipulate the HTML, we first have to load the HTML into the page, right? So we load the HTML and then we manipulate it, right? We would never want to, manipulate the HTML and then load it. That's not the way it works because JavaScript needs to know what it's manipulating, right? So in this case, it would say, go find the list item or the nav item with the class of get started. Okay, but we have to build get started before we can access it. So you're going to learn about that next semester. So JavaScript will almost always go before the closing body tag so that we can affect all the HTML that comes. We want the HTML load and then make changes to it. And that's what's happening here. Okay, that's just the quick version of why we do that. And I like to explain why we do things because then it's easier to stick in your head. Okay, it's not just I told you to do it and that's why. Okay, just because I told you, no, there's a reasoning. So link goes in the head, script goes before the body tag. Okay, that's just the way it's going to go. If we look in the starter file, we'll see the same thing. Link goes in the head, and the script, all the scripts go in the body. In this case, they give you options. You want to comment it out. So in the body tag. Great, we've got it loaded in. I went way off trail on that one. Sorry, guys, but it's important stuff. So now that we've got this loaded in, we should technically be able to go in and start playing around with our structure. So I'm going to open up, if we have this inside of its own folder, I should be able to just right click and open with a live server. If you haven't installed live server, you can go to your extensions over here and you can look up live server. I already have mine installed, so it's not a big deal. We can see it doesn't have an install option. Okay. But I'm going to go ahead and do that. The command palette, the extensions is this guy here, adding blocks to blocks. Okay. And what that does is going to open up a live server that's local. 127.0.0.1 is the number for your modem or your router. So it only exists for you. Don't ever submit a link that looks like this to me because I can't see it. That only exists for you on your computer. That's the number of your computer on your own network, which is your internet. So any changes we make will happen live. I'm going to do one of these tricks. There we go. And I'll shove the whole kit and caboodle over a little bit. Okay, there we go. Here we are. Any questions about how we got to where we are right now? You guys all good? You're with me? I really did a lot of talking, but I created a folder. I put an index.html inside, and then this is just a copy of what the starter file is. That's it. Okay, so let's get down to some brass tacks. So what is the first thing that we need to have inside of our structure for Bootstrap? How do we start our Bootstrap structure?
With a container.
You got it. Our wrapper container, right? So very easy. I'm going to be using Emmet for this just to show you how quickly we can build structure. So Emmet is just the shortcut thing, right? So I'm going to say div.container and hit tab. That'll automatically create a div with a class of container. We're saving time already, guys. So the container is just going to allow us to have some structure left and right. Now I am going to go into the head and I'm going to create some very simple CSS just so we can kind of see what's happening. Okay. Now, I'm going to do this. I don't need an external style sheet because this is just a demo, even though I just told you guys all about don't do this, but this is just a tech demo so we can see it in action. Okay. I really don't want you guys to put any style in the head, but I'm going to do it for now just so we can kind of see what's happening. And go in the head, I'm going to say style and I'll close it there. And I want to give the background a color and the container a color, just so I can see the difference between the two. That's all. So background color of white is fine. Actually, I'm going to change the body. I'm going to give the background color like a gray. I'll do a number, I guess, EF. That's a very light gray. Can you guys, that's probably too light. I'll use CCC. That's fine. There we go. Just a different color. I don't really care what you use, but you'll notice this is definitely not white anymore. This is a gray color. And then I'm going to say anytime I have a container, I want this one to a background color of white. And we should be able to see, okay, once we put some content in the container, we'll be able to see that. Okay, that's the only things I'm going to put in. This is only for demonstration purposes so that you guys can, oops, let's see if I can grab them both here. No, you're not going to do it, eh? You sucker. Okay, there we go. All right, so the body for the is going to just be the background, and the container is just going to be a white so we can see it in action. Okay, a white color. You can do whatever colors you like. That makes sense. Now we've got the container. The reason that it's not showing is the div doesn't have, there's nothing in it. It's just invisible, right? There's no width, there's no height. It's just ready to go. It's empty. So we're not going to see any color. So we have our container. So the next, what do we need next inside the container to create the structure? What's the next piece we have inside? We can have multiple.
The row.
You got it. Excellent. Thank you. Div.row, hit tab. Okay. I'll show you why we have this we can use multiple containers, multiple rows in a second, but that's where we're going to go from now. Okay. Let me make this a little bigger for you guys. Is that better? You guys can see that a little bit more? Hopefully you can. Okay. So we've got this class of container and this class of row. Now that we've got our rows, we can start putting our columns inside. Now, remember, guys, we want to be focusing on this 12 column grid thing. Okay, this is our go-to. So we'll start out with something very simple. I'm going to have 2 equal width columns. So I'm going to have a div with a class of col, and inside I'm just going to say 1, and then I'll have another one after that, div with a class of col, and then inside I'm going to hit 2, make it 2. When I hit save, watch what happens over here. There we go. This is fully responsive, guys. I'll show you that. Look at the breakpoint. There's 100% width. Then I hit my first breakpoint of SM. There's medium. Okay, there's large. There's XL. There's XXL, and then it goes on forever because it's progressively enhanced mobile first. It's responsive out of the box. We don't have to write any media queries. I have coloration, but I haven't done anything else. That is how simple it is to get started with Bootstrap Grid. We just said we want 2 columns that are equal width. They have to be inside of a row, and that has to be inside a container. That's it. Fully responsive right out of the box. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, right? So so that's kind of the first step. Pretty easy. Let's try doing the same thing. Let's make a new row. Okay, and we'll put some extras in there. Okay, or actually, let's just show you. If I wanted to add another column, even if I was building a layout using WordPress or something, and I'm making a theme, but if I wanted to add another column, it's very easy because these are equal width columns. I could just add a new div with a class of column. There's a third one. Watch what happens on the left. There we go. 3 equal width columns, right? Just 1 second, guys. All right, so we have 3 equal width columns, right? So these are very easy to replicate and move across if we want to, if we wanted to have more. Is there any questions about that? Does that make sense? Do you guys see how that goes together so easily and so quickly? That's a very straightforward. I mean, obviously, this isn't going to work for everything. It worked pretty fine for Algonquin College, but I mean, every website is going to be a little bit different, right? So, okay. Now, before we go any further, can I just get you guys to give me a just a thumb or a hands up? I just want to get everyone to do a raise hands emote. I just want to see who's actually here. I appreciate it, guys. All right, just everyone with the hands up, if you don't mind, guys. There's a couple more. I just want to see if you guys are here. Just do the hands up emote or say something in the chat. And Rand, Fadia, Nicholas, Rand, Shahzad. Okay. With 3 left, guys. If you're not here, I'm just going to remove you. All right. Nicholas, Rand, are you here? All right. Okay. Thank you, guys. You can lower your hands. I just wanted to make sure. Thanks, guys. Okay. Thank you for your attention. I appreciate it. I just want to make sure that everyone's putting their best foot forward. There's 2 assignments due for this, right? So it's important that everyone is here. Thank you, guys. Okay, so we had our columns going across, and now that's pretty straightforward. And we can do this very easily. Now let's move to a next level of a next level. We want to have a little more control over, instead of just having these. Let me just do this. Right? Instead of having equal width columns where, I mean, that's nice, but we want to have a little more control. Okay, so I'm going to say, well, let's add some numbers so we can we want it to be certain sizes. So I'm going to make a new row. I can do that inside the containers. That's fine. Here's a div.row. So again, a row is just like it's a new thought. So this might be the about section. Like, just for example, I might call this about. This one might be products, right? And then we can control, like, if it gives you a little better idea of how we're structuring those. But I just have a row. I can put a new thought inside of that. It could have a different color background or any number of things. I'm going to leave that for now. I'm not going to put anything inside. I want to show you guys. I forgot about the container part. So because we'll start there. So the container right now is using a fixed width. We can see that. And as we move up and down, we can see the fixed width, changes to match each breakpoint. But sometimes we want it to be all the way across. So we can do that with container dash fluid. And if I save it, watch what happens. Okay. Now the reason it's not showing is because it's here. Let me just fix that. Container dash fluid. There we go. Right. And now it's 100% width across. It'll stay locked at 100% width all the time. It'll always be a fluid container. Right. Let me, you know what, I'm gonna just make this work for everything that we do. Class equals container. Right. Anytime we have a class and it starts with the word container, then we'll be good. All right. All the stuff we're learning comes in handy already. Okay, so that's it. So now I'm going to move it back to get rid of the fluid part. You've seen that in action. Okay, and I want to move on. Okay, we'll move on from there, and then we'll come back to that and show you the next part second. So I'm going to have a little more control over these columns. I'm going to say I want 2 equal width columns. So in this case, I want a div with a class of call-6. Okay, I'm going to say call-6 in this one, and I'm going to do that again, div call-6. So we have, remember, this is all out of it's all out of 12, right? So 6 and 6 equals 12. And we're able to create this. Now we've locked it in. It's hard to see, but you can imagine just from the beginning and end of these guys, right? I wonder if I can, let me see if I can do something else here. Any row, I want to have any, I'm just want, you guys don't have to do this. I want to set up a little, even, no, let's say, I don't know if I want to go down that road. You know what? I'm just going to leave it for now. That's fine. Yeah, you guys can see that where there's a half of it starts and ends, right? Because it's left aligned. Is this fine? I don't want to go too far into styling things, right? You guys you can say, okay, that's good enough. Okay, all right, let's just move forward. So we've seen that we now are able to have these nice columns. I could put some space underneath, and I'll show you how to do that later. But for now, we're just the real basics of setting up these columns, right? So we said call 6. Let's add another row, and let's just do something a little more. We'll add a couple more different structures. So just so we can practice, div.row. Okay, and inside of this one, let's have a couple. Let's just go arbitrary. Someone give me 3 numbers that are going to add up to 12, right?
Two, 4, 6.
Okay. 6 plus 4 is 10 plus 2. Great. Div, so call 4. And this one, I want to say div dot call dash 6. I'll give us our 10. Div dot call dash 2, right? That should equal the numbers we need. When we go across, we can see now this one, obviously, if 6 is here, then this is going to be less. Like we can see clearly that this is following a grid system. All right. Any questions so far? Does this make sense? You guys see how this all comes together pretty quickly? All right. So with that said, this is great, but this doesn't really allow us a lot of options for responsivity, right? It says, okay, well, at default, it's always going to be that same size, and that's okay, but we want to have a little more control. Let's see, Marina, you have a question?
Yes, it's about the responsive part.
Yep.
I was wondering, I can see that it is responsive now, but for example, if I want to use 4 columns in the desktop, I think it's a good layout, but for mobile, for example, I think it's not gonna work. So like 4 columns for mobile, I think is like it's gonna be too small.
You're
so
right.
How can we fix that or make like in rows instead of columns? Should we use the style that we will create?
You beat me to the punch. I was just getting to that point. So it's great that you brought that up, because that's a perfect segue into where I was going with this next. Is this looks really good at this point. So first of all, thank you for that comment and that question. I appreciate that. But this looks really great at certain breakpoints. But I'm always talking about how at mobile, we shouldn't be using columns, and I make a big stink about that. So that's one of the things that we can do here. So let's add another row, or actually no, yeah, we'll do that. Let's add another row, and we'll go from there. So you know what, we can do multiple containers too, but I'm just going to add another row. So in this case, div.row, and I'm going to show you the real magic of Bootstrap. Now, I could say call 4, call 6, call 2, okay? But what I want to do is say at a certain breakpoint, then do that, right? That's really what I want to accomplish. So I'm going to go back to this call 6, this idea, right? So div call -6, and in this, I'm just going to use 1 and 2 again. Div dot call -6, and I hit tab and call that number 2. Now I have, again, 1 and 2. These, you can see they match column 6. What I want to do here is I want to specify, remember guys, divs by default are 100% width. Bootstrap, because we've loaded it in here, it recognizes that when I say call -6, I want it to be, this column is going to be 50% width, and this column is going to be 50% width inside the container. That's kind of what's happening. But what I want to do is say be 50% width when I hit the large breakpoint. So we would say call -LG-6. Look what happened. It broke down into 1 and 2 are now in rows until I hit the large breakpoint. Let's change that. I'm going to change that to medium, MD. That way we can see it in action. Now look at this. So it is perfect. It's right where we want to. We'll go all the way to the bottom. Now at the smallest breakpoint, we can see clearly 1 and 2 are now full width, 100% mobile friendly rows. Even though it says call 6, it's saying only do that at medium. Because remember guys, mobile first progressive enhancement. By default, we're doing the default thing. It's a div, it should be 100% width. And only when it hits medium and then above, from there on, it'll be 50% or 6 out of 12. So watch what happens. And again, we'll talk about the breakpoints, but let's just slowly make it go forward. There it is. This is where Bootstrap grid layout becomes stupid insane. It is so easy to use. What do you guys think about that? That's a game changer, right? No media queries, no anything. It's just common sense. We can download all the files, right? And we can go through all that stuff. We can download the files and we can go through all those things manually, right? But the and change all the breakpoints. But for most clients, this will be fine, right? That changes everything, guys. That is an absolute game changer. That is why Bootstrap is so powerful. Let's extend it a little further. We've said here, remember guys, mobile first progressive enhancement. We've said right here by giving it a breakpoint size, we've said be default, which is 100% width, because that's what divs do by default. Be default until we hit the medium breakpoint, at which time we want to be 6 out of 12. So let's extend it. Let's do the mobile first, and then now we're going to progressively enhance it by adding another breakpoint. I'm going to say this one I want to be at large. I want it to be 8. And this next, the one underneath it, I want to say at large, I'm going to use the remainder, which is 4. So now I've set up 2 media query breakpoints, 2 distinct and separate layouts, well, 3 actually. 100% width up until we hit medium, then it'll be 50% width up until we hit large, in which case we'll do this 8 out of 12 and 4 out of 12. Let's go back, verify. Here's our 100% width up until we hit the medium. Now it's 6 out of 6 and 6 out of 6. And then when we hit large, this one takes up 8 out of the 12, and this takes up 4 of the 12. If you want to really see it in action, we can say 10 and 2, or whatever you want. There we go, 10 and 2. It matches here. We can see the last one takes 2. And it's all responsive out of the box. Guys, this is a game changer. What do you guys think about that? Comments, concerns? Yeah. This is why it's so important. I wanted everyone to make sure everyone was here and people are in class, because this, guys, we don't have to touch. I've done background colors just so we can see what's going on here. That's all I've done here, guys. There's nothing crazy. Now, knowing that this is a thing, we can do the same thing with our container. I can decide at what point I want to break from this mobile 100% width up to a larger size. I could say I want that to occur at large. Right? So now it's going to be 100% width. The container is going to be 100% width because it's the default up until we hit large. And then it's going to be only start doing that medium breakpoint, or that centered breakpoint. Sorry, centered wrapper or container in this case. So this dash LG dash MD dash SM dash whatever, these breakpoints, which I'll show you again here now, okay, are really important. There they are. So at medium, it's 768, and it'll do that from 768 on until I put a new breakpoint in, and it'll say, okay, now we're doing from large on. Right? It's always from that breakpoint and then forever. That's why if I put a maximum on it, it's going to stop it, but it doesn't work that way. This is the industry standard. It proves that the industry wants to use this mobile first, which means only minimum widths, because it says once you hit the minimum width of 576, make the background red, and then it'll be red from there on, because 576 pixels is still a part of 768. 576 is still a part of 992. Like, it exists underneath those numbers. So when we say a minimum of, it means keep going on, assuming that's what you want to do until I change it at a higher breakpoint. And then it'll keep going on until I change it at a higher breakpoint again. Minimum with progressive enhancement. It's alive and well inside of Bootstrap, which is, again, why I've been trying to beat that into your heads, right? Saying it's so important. And now we see why. I'm going to change that. I'm going to get rid of that part in here. I just wanted to show you. Okay, that is how it's so important. Now, there's a few other things we can do. Let's just play around with a few different things. I'm going to create a new container. Now, there's a few instances. Let's use the Algonquin College website. We can see here, we've got a container. Okay, this is all starting to make a lot more sense now, why it looks like that, right? All of the websites you look at, well, they all kind of follow this grid system, and it's so easy to lay out. Now look at this one. This one's a little bit different. It breaks the mold. It kind of doesn't really look like it really has a content. It's got this background picture. The container is not really there. Well, that's okay. We can do that inside of our structure, because we don't remember, we can have unlimited amounts of columns inside of rows. We can have unlimited amounts of rows inside of containers. And on the same note, we can have unlimited amounts of containers inside of the body. So let's add a new container. But I'm going to do that a little differently. Don't just hold off yet, because I want to have a different, I'm not going to use a background image. I'm going to use a different color for this. So I need a placeholder that's 100% width, which is any div, any structure, section, whatever. And I'm going to give it a background color, or in this case, it would be like background would be bridge.jpg or something. And I'll show you how that works. So in the normal instance, we can't, we're inside the container, so we can't fix the background. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to give a div with a class equal. I'm going to call it bridge, even though there's not going to be a bridge there. I'm just going to use a background color. And I'm going to go back in here. Bridge is going to be, I'm going to give it a background color of, I don't know, we'll just say something really dark, 333. Okay, that should match. That's just to replicate this background image, bridge. That's why I'm using that, because there's a sky bridge, and I'm going to give it a dark, instead of using an image. I don't want to get an image. So that's good enough. So now I've got this bridge. Now I can just put my structure inside of this, because this by default is going to be 100% white. It's a div. So let's go in here now. I can say, now I can have my container again, and I can have my row inside of that again. And I'm just going to use a single column just to get the point across. I'm going to say div.call. Okay, or actually, no, I'll say call dash, let's say call 5. Okay, this is going to be .call 5. And once I do that, we can see there is the background. It doesn't look very big because, I mean, there's only the word call 5 inside of it. But if I had set paddings and margins, which I will do in a second, we would see a lot more behind it. But now we see how we can create this. We put the container inside of a separate structure. What we did is we closed the container so that this edged, right, and it's got a definitive edge. We closed that so that we could open up a 100% width div, which would have a background, or in this case, just a color. And then inside of that, we went back to having this fixed width centered container. There it is in white. Do you see how that worked? It's important to know that we can do that. The Bootstrap structure lives it's for us to use. It's a toolbox that we can use to build within our own design. So very simple. So this might, in this case, I call it bridge, but maybe it's its own section of something, right? So that's all well and good, right? But we are trying to replicate this. It's all the way over to the side. So now I've used this div column of 5. So let's move it over to the side. Let's say I want to, what does that leave us left over? If I want to offset this over, what does that leave us left over? It leaves us 7, right? 7 plus 5 is 12. So I'm going to offset this over. I'm going to say, just very simply, offset dash 7, because 7 plus 5 equals, now look, it moved it over by 7. It offset just means move it away from where it's supposed to be. It offsets it by 7, and then the column is 5. And that gives us, that kind of replicates what we're doing here. Now, again, guys, we can use that responsive structure as well by adding the numbers in there. Okay, and I'll do that in 1 second to prove it to you, but I want to give everyone a chance to get here first. Let's make this just a little smaller so we can see it in action. There we go. Okay. So far, what do you guys think? Is it making sense? You guys confused? Or this is one of those things where you have to do it and play with it. I can talk about it until my eyes fall out. You have to play with it. You have to see it and do it, and then it starts making sense. And believe me, this is a practiced skill. Okay, but once you start understanding the structure of the classes and the ordering in which to use them, it becomes a lot easier. It's going to take some getting used to, for sure it is. But I can tell you this much, guys. I always deploy my websites using Bootstrap. Every website I have uses Bootstrap, and then I turn this Bootstrap into a WordPress theme every single time. But Bootstrap is the starting point, because I can build this out in no time, guys. I can build a website in 2 hours, a fully fleshed, good-looking website, and I can do that using Bootstrap. It just takes some practice. Okay, so but luckily we have lots of time to do that. So let's just see how we would make this particular piece responsive. Okay, for example, here we see, notice how it starts off mobile, and then only when it hits a certain breakpoint does it add that offset, right? So how are we going to do that? Let's see. So we just have to look at the structure here. By default, we want to have offset at a certain point. We only want the offset and the column to appear at a certain size, right? So we could very easily just say something like at medium. Let's see if this works. Let's try it. Oops. There we go. Let's see if that works for us. I think they might have made some changes. No, that worked just fine. So just by adding the breakpoint in, okay? It's all about when we put those breakpoints and making sure they match up. So for every breakpoint that we have basically in a row, okay, in this case, we want to count all the breakpoints in a row, all the numbers in a row. They have to match per breakpoint. So MD and MD, there's 2 of them, 6 plus 6, that's 12. LG and LG, there's 2 of them, 10 plus 2, that's 12. We want to make sure those numbers add up. In this case, we have 2 MDs, so we have 7 and 5. And there's, again, we can also use the text justify to center and different things like that. But we're able to see these structures. What do you guys think so far? I think we're almost ready for a break, and I can give you a challenge, but what do you guys think? Notice, guys, no CSS. I mean, aside from some coloration so we can see. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. I want to show you guys just a little bit more, just a tiny bit. This is easy. We've already covered this part. I'm sorry if I'm talking too fast. I get pretty excited about this, but this is a game changer, right? And it's fun because we're not doing math, really simple, basic math. But this looks okay. But for example, this part was offset we just added. It's really crunched together, right? Is there a way that we learned maybe last week that we can, without touching our style sheet, that we can adjust margins or paddings, or maybe padding in here to make sure that there's some room between where the content is and the edge of the box? Does anybody remember how we might do that? Remember, we have what we call a margin and padding notation, right? So if I go back here, yeah, MT, what would MT stand for? I know you've done this before, right? So yeah, there you go. Exactly. So we can look up, if I look up margin, I'm still going to look up notation, display notation. There's our margin and padding notation. It's in spacing. I could just look up margin and it would tell us like margins and padding, do it in capitals, but there is some notation for that. So I'm just going to look up the notation right now. I'm looking for margin and padding, and this explains M for margin, P for padding, and then T for top, B for bottom. We want to adjust, in our case, the padding on the top and bottom. So that's the Y-axis. So I would just go into my row and I would say, I want to adjust the padding on my Y-axis, and it uses this numeric integer, right? Every 3 is the default. That means 1 rem. Okay. And then what we can do is we can say, I want it to be 1.5 times normal, right? What's 1 times 1.5? Or I can be 3 times normal. That's 3 times. In this case, I'm going to give it a big one. So if I want it to be 3 times bigger than normal, then I use 5. If I want it to be 4 times or 1.5 times bigger than normal, I use 4. If I use 3, if I want it to stay normal, which is 1 rem. If I want it to be half the size, I use 2, right? It's basically, these numbers are a scale. How much bigger or smaller than the default of 3 do you want to be, right? So in this case, I want it to be pretty big. So I'm going to say I want it to be 3 times bigger than the default of 1 rem, which will be 3 rem, right? So PY-5, padding on the Y-axis, so it's top and bottom, is going to be 5. I did the wrong one again, okay? It's pretty big, but it gives you the idea. And now inside of here, I can use alignments and I can use, there's all kinds of other things we've learned that we can use inside of that if I wanted to. I can say text align, or sorry, text center rather. If I wanted to move things to the center, I'm not going to. I don't like doing it that way, but you get the idea. And let's just say we want to put some space between this 1 and 2 and the bottom of this next container. Okay, so where would I put that? If I wanted to put a margin right here where the space is between this container and the bridge div. If I wanted to do that, what would make sense, guys? What do you think?
You do margin body or bottom MB in the container.
This one here?
Or in the row. Oh wait. Yeah, I think the top container.
Don't overthink it. What's your first instinct?
Top container.
Yeah, because that makes sense, right? Because that's the one we actually want to affect. We want the space between. Basically, we can see where it ends, where the gray is there. So that's where I would put it. Margin bottom, let's just say 4, just for the sake of whatever. There we go. Now you can see how easily it starts to, this doesn't look great, right? I could go into each row and I could adjust things. If I wanted to manually put space in, I could say row, I could say margin bottom 1 rem. Right, if I wanted to, but remember, we're always using paddings and things like that. So that's not really a great solution either. Okay, but I would be there's ways around. We can use gutters and gaps, and sometimes we have to override. Remember, guys, this isn't a perfect solution because we've told it specifically already that we want to have a background color on here. Then it becomes kind of problematic. And remember, even the Algonquin website, it goes edge to edge. We can see it looks like it doesn't because you're like, well, it's white. Well, that's because they used a white background. And we see a lot of times when we use this kind of technique, what we're doing is we're alternating white to a color and then to a different color and then white. Like it's always, we don't go from row to row. It wouldn't be white to a white to a white to a photo background. The backgrounds usually alternate. This would be like, here's a gray one. This one has a photo. This one's like a white background like this. This one kind of has a photo. You'll notice that in most websites, they use some sort of a way to discern how the rows are going to be different to say this is a different section. It's a different thought. It's like a paragraph, right? This is visually, we're just creating columns and putting content in. It's basically like a breath point or a paragraph or a phrasing of a song or something. Same thing here. Okay. I think I've shown you enough stuff here to get moving forward. Is there any questions before we take our break? Comments, concerns? You guys hate this? You love it? You wish I'd shut up? Is there any comments or like anything you guys have to say before we take our break? Yeah, it's pretty great, right? It's practice though. And so that'll bring us into, I have a challenge for you guys in the next hour that's going to give you an opportunity to play around with this. Here, and before we take our break, let me just clarify something. You can use this grid system in the final. I'm fine with that. I'm going to get, when we come back, I will talk about that in detail. As long as you're not relying on this and you submit, we'll talk about when we come back. Don't let me forget, okay? But let's take our break. I think we've all earned it. If you have to go to the washroom or grab a coffee, whatever, now is the time to do it. 15 minutes and 15-minute timer. And when we come back, we'll go back over this a little bit more. Okay, thanks, guys. All right. Hey, guys. Okay, so we're back. I got so many emails sent during that break. That was so important. Okay, that's great, guys. So we've been discussing how to use the Bootstrap grid system, and then equal columns, numbered columns, and then also how to make everything responsive, with just using classes, which is such a powerful tool, right? I mean, that is absolutely super powerful. So with that said, guys, I love to talk. It's not a secret. I'll never be accused of being a quiet guy. Love talking because I'm really passionate about web design, but I can only talk so much about something before it's important that you guys, oops, there we go. I can only talk so much before you guys have to get in and just get your hands dirty trying something. So with that said, I have a challenge for you. Now, this is not a graded challenge. This is the kind of thing that's going to help you guys to understand and do better, know where to look inside the, inside the docs and things like that. Okay, so this is not a graded challenge. I just want you guys to have a chance to try things out. We're going to use the next 40, probably about 35 minutes, because I'm going to take a couple of seconds and talk about something first to do this challenge. So I'll explain the challenge in 1 second. I want to first explain what I had said before you guys went on break about using Bootstrap for your final. Now, you guys are allowed to use Bootstrap. Not everyone is an expert in Flex. Not everyone's an expert in Grid. That's fine. Some people are in this course because they want to be they are graphic designers, or because they're photographers, but you need to have that little extra bit. This lowers the bar to entry. So it allows people to be able to make responsive websites and understand some of the fundamentals, but not necessarily have to be a specialist, right? I'm a web designer, but I'm not a photography specialist. And there's people who are the opposite in here, who maybe are photography specialists, but not a web design specialist. So this allows you to get into that, and that's fine. So I'm okay if you guys want to use the Bootstrap grid or whatever as part of your assignment, but I will warn you, yes, it makes things a lot easier, okay? And the requirement for that is that you guys are going to have to do a lot of modifications if you want to use the existing structure here. So if you want to use alerts and buttons in here, great. It better not look like a Bootstrap website, because Bootstrap websites largely look all the same. I showed you that last class. Yes, I think I showed you some examples how Bootstrap just looks like Bootstrap, right? Yeah, and it really does. If I look at your website and it looks like Bootstrap, you're going to lose design marks, straight and simple. So if you're going to use Bootstrap in your website, which I'm totally fine with, be prepared that the ease of not having to write media queries, the cost of that is going to be that you're going to be doing a lot of configuration so that it doesn't look like Bootstrap. Okay, so I don't want the Bootstrap primary, the color, that blue, I don't want to see that unless it's already a part of your prototype design or something. Okay, there shouldn't be a reason. Things like that. Okay. And to add on to that, if you send me a final and there's like 12 lines of CSS code because you use so much Bootstrap, it's good. You're going to fail that assignment, right? The whole point of the final is for you to show me what you've learned this whole semester. One of the things you've learned is Bootstrap. If you only show me Bootstrap, then I can only grade you on 1 out of 16 weeks, and you're going to get 1 out of 16th of a grade. Okay, I think that's a reasonable thing for me to assume and assess, right? So show me as much as you can that you've learned. Give me some animations. Show me a little bit of Flex if you want. You don't have to. You can use this. I'm fine with that. Okay, I want you guys to feel to use the tools that I've given you. One of those tools is Bootstrap. Don't rely on it, but it's a one tool in the toolbox. If all you have is a hammer and you're trying to build a house, it's going to be terrible, right? You should have an assortment of tools. Now, does that all make sense? Is there any questions about what I mean by that? Yeah, I want you guys to be able to use this as one of the tools in your toolbox. Don't rely on it, right? Don't completely rely on it. And if you do, you better be prepared to do some heavy modifications, right? All the sites that I show you when I go to like this one here, for example, this is a Bootstrap website. Does it look like Bootstrap? No, that doesn't look like a boot. It has some of the, when you hover over, but even the timing I changed, right? How about this? Here's another Bootstrap website that I built. Does it look like Bootstrap? Unfortunately, their color is blue, so I just stuck with primary. So that's the difference. But with that said, aside from the blue color, which you can see is part of their branding, right? It kind of looks like, even then, it kind of looks like Bootstrap, right? Bootstrap just looks like Bootstrap. So you better be prepared to do a whole lot of modification if you want to use it. Okay. But at its core, if you're just using the column structure for building layout, that's probably a really great start. You weren't allowed to use it before, but you're allowed to use it for the final. Okay. Because now this is one of the things we've learned. So if you have any questions about that, we can talk about that going forward. But now let's talk about our challenge. This is a practice challenge. You're not going to be handing anything in. I'm not grading. I want you guys to have an opportunity to go to getbootstrap.com. I'm going to post the link again for you. Okay. That's where your documentation is going to be. I'm going to be here if you have any questions. I'll be in and out. And you're going to use the Algonquin College website as a guide and replicate it. Now, we got a half hour. Don't worry about color. Don't worry about content. Don't worry about pictures. Worry about the structure. I just want you guys to get used to using this structure. Okay. If you want to make it responsive, you can. If you want to use a different website, you can. Okay. You can build your own. I want you guys to take the next roughly half an hour and have a chance to sandbox it, get in the sandbox and play, right? Just play around without any real huge amount of structure. That's why I'm saying if you use the website here, there's a good amount of like column structure. There's some rows, right? So don't worry about all the little fine details. Worry about the big stuff. And then if you have time, you can worry about the small stuff. Practice some offsets. If you like to use something else, you want to use a different website, feel free to use a different website. I'm okay with that. You're not handing it in. That's my challenge to you guys for the next half hour. Okay. Please don't just go walk away. You're going to need the opportunity to go in here and say, well, how do I do that thing with them? Oh, there we go. There's some spacing and you can go in and see that and understand how to use that. Okay. So I'm going to mute myself and I'm going to pause the recording and we'll come back a little bit before, probably 5 minutes before 10:45, 10:40 or so, in about half hour, 20 minutes. And we'll discuss lessons learned, answer any questions, things like that. All right, guys. Any questions before I kind of send you to do your own thing? Okay. All right, guys, have fun with it, right? This isn't a challenge. This should be an opportunity. And I'm here if you have questions. All right, guys. I think we're pretty good here. Hopefully everyone had a chance to play around a bit and look at offsets and the different sizing issues and or different sizing parameters and things like that. What was the general thought? What do you guys, is this something you guys feel like you could use going forward, or what do you guys think? Yeah. Feels like I could play with it for hours. And it will, I'll be honest, it will take hours. I mean, there's a lot to learn, but start with the basics, start with 3 simple columns and then work your way forward. And the big thing is to make sure that if you're using Bootstrap version 5, that you're actually on the documentation for Bootstrap version 5, because sometimes you can just type up, Bootstrap docs, watch this, Bootstrap documentation, and we'll see this one. Look at this. Look what happens when I go to just the first link, right? It's going to take me to version 4.1. So be careful with that, just because sometimes they don't add up. See, 4.1.3. So be careful. So with that said, guys, I hope you appreciated that challenge and that it was useful for you. Let me just let me get back. I hope you found that useful. Again, you don't have to hand anything in. Feel free to play around with it a little bit more. You may find it useful going forward, but you will have 2 weeks to play with it because there is an assignment coming up about that. And I'll talk a little bit more in the end. With that said, does anybody have any questions or comments, or anybody find anything interesting, or anybody want to discuss or break down the time you spent working on the on Bootstrap? You guys are super quiet today. Everyone's just ready to be done with classes. Okay, so yeah, so that's the big thing. Hopefully you kind of saw how it worked and you were able to get the responsive bit. Just more practice. Yeah, you guys are definitely going to have practice. And well, might as well get into that. We have 5 minutes now. I'll explain now the assignment that we have coming up. That way, when we come back from a break, we just do the we'll just do the in-class assignment, and we'll be on our way. So I'll take some time and do that now. So I'll close this up. And yeah, it'll definitely take some practice. There's no two ways around that. Okay, so we can go to week 11, down to the in-class, or to rather the assignment. The assignment is Bootstrap this, right? This is the one, again, notice the due dates. This one is due at the end of today. This one is due on August the 4th. So make sure when you're submitting that you submit the assignment and the in-class to the right spot. I grade what I receive, right? So we're going to do the Bootstrap this. You can click that, or you can just go right directly from here. That's fine as well. This is the we're going to be talking about not the participation, but the exercise. Bootstrap this. Okay, and I'm going to take a few minutes. We'll go through this, then we'll take a break and come back. So what we're going to do here is, this is not a design challenge. This is a tech demo. I want you guys to demo to me that you understand Bootstrap. We spent 2 weeks learning on it. We've had some time to play with it. So I want you guys to go through that and look at it. So now here's the requirements. Okay, what you're going to do is you're going to be creating a 1-page website talking about the benefits of using Bootstrap. Okay, this is not a lorem ipsum site. This is, you are building some content. I want you guys in your own words, not copy and pasted. I want you guys in your own words to talk about Bootstrap. So here's the requirements. So the website has to share the features and benefits of Bootstrap. It should include Bootstrap examples of Bootstrap components or utilities, and also in bold instructions on how to use Bootstrap. Okay, please do not copy and paste. If you copy and paste, it will cost you marks. Make it your own words. You can paraphrase it, but I want you to write your own words. I want to see that you've read it and you can, at least write a sentence about it. That's really all I'm asking for, guys. The website must be built using the Bootstrap framework. So what we just learned today, it has to be built using that, fully responsive, right? So should be something you guys can do. You can only use the Bootstrap classes. No custom CSS can be used. So there should not be a style sheet whatsoever. No style sheet, right? No custom CSS can be used. So there'd be no style sheet. So you're only going to be using Bootstrap classes. There's colors, there's margin, padding, there's columns, all kinds of things we can do within that, but you're going to be using only the Bootstrap classes, okay, to create this Bootstrap demo. Okay, it has to use the Bootstrap grid. It must include Bootstrap navigation. I will talk about that in just a second when I'm done this part. Okay, the website must use additional Bootstrap components, buttons, card, Jumbotron, etc. I'm hoping between no less than 2, no more than 4. Okay, additional. What does he mean by components? Let's go see. Get Bootstrap. Here's get started. Look down here. Components. Honestly, for those of you who want to take the easy way out, we've covered alerts, right? And we've covered buttons. All right. So if you don't really care about learning this stuff, use alerts and buttons. Okay. If you want to challenge yourself, make sure look what else is in here. Full carousels. Maybe that's a lot. How about card systems, right? Don't copy and paste. This has stuff like styles and weird, like just read the information and figure out what's going on and then make any necessary changes. None of your code in this course ever should have inline styles until you get to JavaScript. There should never be an inline style. There should never be an import tag, right? So make sure you're not using that stuff. What else do we have? Collapsibles, right? Things like that. Look at this one, modal windows. Right here. Okay, so there's lots to choose from, and you can just read through. You have 2 weeks to do this, guys. It's one single web page using a layout we've just talked about, and there's no design constraints. You can do whatever you like with the design. Okay, I'll talk about that in a second here, but it's pretty simple. The instructions are all here. So between 2 and 4 of these components. Okay, what you'll want to do is demo it and explain how it works. That's all it is, just a little bit. Okay, so you have to have additional Bootstrap components. We just talked about 2 and 4 of them. Between 2 and 4, the website must be optimized for all screens, which means there should be it should be responsive, right? When you go to it, it should be a responsive website, because we have the ability to do that with very easily with Bootstrap. Okay, if you show me how you know how to use those breakpoints, then I have something to grade. If you don't do that and it doesn't break down, I don't have anything to grade for layout. And the completed version of the website has to be published to your GitHub Pages site, right? That's username.github.io. When you submit the link, guys, don't grab the URL from the HTML. I shouldn't have to say this again, but don't grab it from the HTML. You go to the URL bar, you highlight the link, copy it from there, and then submit that link. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Make sure you do that. There's no custom CSS. I talked about that. This is just an example of what it might look like. Okay, here's some things that they did with an actual demo of what alerts is and breadcrumbs and list groups, right? So just basic content. I'm not looking for tons of stuff, just a little bit. Okay, the resources here are out of date. You know, this is Bootstrap 4, the documentation for Bootstrap 4. It's really simple, guys. Go to getbootstrap.com and then click on Get Started, and it'll take you to the Get Started page, right? This is version 5. I have to update this. I apologize. This is out of date, but don't use these links, okay? So everything you need is in the Bootstrap docs. So once again, if I see Bootstrap version 4 in here, it means you're not paying attention to the requirements here. So please, guys, getbootstrap.com and then just click on Get Started, and that'll make sure it's Bootstrap version 5. Always check that out. Okay, in the rubric, very simply, layout and design, okay? The more you put into the design, the better it's going to be. I am not looking for a super gorgeous, insanely beautiful thing, because it's going to look like Bootstrap no matter what. But if you put some time and thought and effort into it, you should be able to, it should be easy to get this, because the whole site is designed for this, or the whole framework is designed for this simplicity. Okay. I don't want to see when I do like this, I don't want to see any scroll bars in the bottom. Okay. You shouldn't use overflow hidden. Well, you can't do any custom CSS anyway, but overflow hidden doesn't work. So just very simple. Be careful, make sure you use container, row, and columns. Make sure that you're using the Bootstrap framework properly and you're showing understanding of the grid, the navigation of the components. Again, I'll cover navigation in a second. Make sure you're showing understanding. And then the content. How much did you put into the content? If you copy and pasted it, you're going to get 0 points. If you put one sentence and it barely talks about it, you're going to get 4, all the way up to 10 points. You guys at least put a little bit of effort into it, right? I was talking to someone about this before. How do you maximize your points? Like, what are you looking for to maximize everything? Here's the rubric I'm going to grade from. Grade yourself, right? Let me show you really quickly what I'm talking about. I'm going to go to assignment activities. I'm going to go to rubrics. When I go down to rubrics, I can see in here, I've got one for Bootstrap this. I'm going to go through, I'm going to look at your assignment. I'm going to put them side by side. I'm going to have yours over here. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to look at the code and look at the design. I'm going to go, yep. I'm going to click here and it'll say, okay, 20 points. I'm going to look over again. I'm going to say, oh, maybe they didn't really understand the grid. So, okay, well, they're going to go boop. I don't know if there's any feedback. I'll leave it. Do they have good content? Yeah. Okay. Click. And then it adds all the markup. That's how I grade, guys. So if you want to double check to make sure you're getting all your grades, grade yourself. Go look at the rubric, right? And say, do I have everything I need to get to those points? Am I missing validation? Do I have good content? Right? Things like that. Look at the requirements, and then look at the rubric and grade your own assignment. That's the best advice I can give you guys for any course you ever take. If there's a rubric, utilize it, because that's what the professor's doing. With that said, there is the piece about the navigation. Okay, well, I'm going to go back here really quickly to slide week number 10, and you'll see there is a video here and a slide for lecture 16. Now, I want to make sure that you guys understand this is homework. Okay, there's nothing to hand in. You just have to watch the video. Okay, it's going to talk about the Bootstrap navigation. Okay, there's a nav bar, nav tabs, navigation. Okay, it'll talk about this. I didn't want to go into extreme detail with this because I could spend a whole class talking about this. Watch the video so you'll have a basic understanding of what is going on here, so that when you go to grab a nav bar, you kind of know what's happening. It can be as simple as this. It can be as simple as one of these, right? It doesn't have to be too crazy. You'll see it's really just an unordered list. It's just this little bit of stuff here. And why is it important? Because, guys, it is responsive out of the box. It's just this part that's not highlighted that causes this to happen. And that little video will talk about that, okay? And there's also a slide that goes along with it, number 16. So just a little bit of homework. You have to make sure there's a navigation bar in there as well. This will discuss it. You don't have to do any of the other stuff associated with that. There's just a little video. And that's it, okay? So that's the assignment. You have 2 weeks to do that. It's a single web page that basically talks about Bootstrap, and and has a couple of demonstrations. So it's not too difficult, right? You guys think you can handle that? It'll give you a good opportunity to go through and practice. Yep. Okay, and the only thing we're going to hand in today, we're going to cover in the next hour. And just like we always do, guys, essentially, I'm going to do it for you, and we're going to talk about it and go through it. And that is the in-class assignment that's due at midnight tonight. Okay, so we'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll do that. But before we go, are there any questions about this assignment that we have here? Anything at all? Bootstrap this, it's due in 2 weeks, right? It'll be due at the end of next class. So on the 4th, at the end of class, because that's a work lab, right? Rob.
This is like a very quick, possibly silly question, but I know you say no inline style is allowed, but would that include like adding style in the head? Like, can we change background colors and stuff like that, or no?
No, I don't. So no, there shouldn't be any CSS at all aside from bootstrap.css. That should be the only thing in there. When I say inline style, I mean like, let me just see, for example, if I go to cards, just so we're on the same page for everyone, this is an inline style. It's a style that appears in the style. So there shouldn't really be any example. You should have no CSS written anywhere on this website. Okay, that will be a major detractor. I mean, that goes against everything we're trying to do in this assignment, right? So remember, you can use BG info and BG primary, BG secondary. Remember, go to the color utilities, theme colors, and you can see how to, sorry, it's in the color. There we go. I was just there. Come on, Rob. Not you, me. Let's customize component. There is one for colors, or am I just not looking deep enough into it? That's the SAS color map. Hang on. Oops. Is it theme? Oh, theme colors, is that one? No, it's right there. Where is the color? I looked at it before. I just want to make sure that we've got the right section here. I'll show you. There's many of them that say color. Here we go. Under colors, it was the third one. It's under utilities. There we go. Color under utilities. Right. So you can change the background of all the colors, right? Using these different things: primary, secondary, success. Right. We could say background, BG success, BG secondary, and it'll have all the different colors. Right. We talked about those different things.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, there it is. Sorry, the background's right here. So you can actually apply BG primary, for example, to the whole body, and the whole body would be blue. I'm not saying do that. I'm just saying, here's BG light. Maybe you want to, play around with that. But there, lots of opportunity to look at different, there's gradients and things like that. So that's the best way to do that. But really, please don't add any custom CSS. I don't want to have to lower marks.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Yeah, no problem. Christine says, for requirement 1, we need to write in our own words to explain how to use Bootstrap. Absolutely. Yep. So please don't go over here to get started, introduction, and copy that, right? It has to be in your, any content that's in here should be in your own words. You can paraphrase it, right? For example, it says, quick start, looking to quickly add Bootstrap to your project, use JS to look. That's not going to help you at all, but what would be good here? Let's see, under CSS, copy and paste a link to the style sheet. Just reword it, right? How many paragraphs should we use? That depends how far down the rabbit hole you want to go for content. This is a small tech demo. Honestly, I'm not looking for much information. I want you to show me that you understand how to use it, the basics of it, right? So if you're showing me alerts, for example, let's go to components, go to alerts. they explain alerts here in just a couple of sentences, right? Provide contextual feedback message for typical user actions with a handful of available and flexible alert messages. I mean, you could probably do the same thing in 1 or 2 sentences, right? So that's all I'm looking for. Don't go too far down the rabbit hole. I just want to know that you understand. Then, of course, along with what the alert is, how do you use it? Well, it'd be like, in order to use it, you just have to make sure you add the class of alert, which creates the style, and then, or the general styling, and then the alert primary, which sets the color theme that we want to use. That's a couple of sentences. I'm happy with that. Don't go too far down the rabbit hole, guys. Show me you know how to use Bootstrap, and I'll give you the grades. That's all it is. That's it. So do we have any other questions? Remember, you guys have 2 weeks to do this. If you show up at the work lab and you're like, where do I get started? Come on, guys, we got lots of time. This should be about 2 to 4 hours of work across the next 2 weeks. It really, don't go too far down the rabbit hole. Give me something to look at to show me you know how to do it. And that's it. The hardest part of this is going to be watching the video and then applying it. That's the hard part. Okay. Everything else is very straightforward. And lastly, don't try and get themes. I know there's themes out there, Bootstrap themes. Okay. I've seen them all, guys. I've seen them all. Okay. If you try and submit me themes, right? I mean, these are all pretty high-end examples, but please don't try and find basic wireframe themes and submit those. Okay, guys, we're going to take a 15-minute break. Then we're going to come back and we are going to do the in-class assignment together. And then you'll have the rest of the class. You can submit it. It's done, and you're on your own. Okay. Any questions? Anything before we get our 15 minutes on? Okay, guys, I will see you in a few minutes. Thank you for your attention. All right, guys. We are back. So let's get ready to go here. Okay, so we're coming into the last little bit here. So all we have left to do is the in-class participation. So this one is hanging by your bootstraps. I'm gonna go back to Brightspace. We have the assignment, right? And you'll notice here, that's due on August the 4th at 12 p.m., the end of class. So this is not where you want to submit your in-class exercise. Make sure you submit your in-class exercise. It's called hanging by your bootstraps. Make sure you submit it. The in-class exercise, double check the due date. It's today, right? At the end of the day, it's called hanging by your bootstraps. This is where you want to submit it, okay? If you submit it to the wrong spot, guys, I grade what I get, right? And by now, you know that I'm a lot of things, right? But I'm a stickler for that. So please, guys, make sure you submit it to the right spot. Double check everything before and after you submit, just to be sure. So let's go ahead let's get this ball rolling and do it, and then we'll talk about that. Okay, so hanging by your bootstraps. Bootstrap, this is the big one we have. We're doing hanging by your bootstraps, and you can tell because when you go in, it's a code pen, right? Let's click it. It'll take us to a code pen. Okay, some of you might have noticed before that the answers were already there. It's not that big of a deal. We go through and answer together anyway. But yeah, this is where we're at, is the code pen. So make sure, guys, when you come in here that you are signed in your own account and that it doesn't say IMD. You want to fork the pen. So it has your own username here and your own username there, right? You want to make sure that it is forked so that you have your own copy of it so you can submit, right? If you submit and it says IMD or whatever, you're just going to be a blank one. So, all right, I'll give you guys just a second to get that done. Create the fork. Okay, it's called hanging by your bootstraps. Anybody have any questions, comments? Are you guys good there? Everybody, we're good to go? Nobody needs another second or anything like that? All right. We're going to do this together. It's not that bad. Most of it's fairly straightforward. We do have to do something ahead of time. I want to verify that we are on the right spot. So everyone click up here on settings. You see on the top side, it says settings. We're going to click on that. And on the left-hand side, we want to see that it says CSS. So click there. And we're going to scroll to the bottom. There should be a resource in here. In this case, we have added an external style sheet. We're going to add this, Bootstrap 5. It should say Bootstrap 5.0.2. Is that the case for everyone? Thumbs up if it does. if it says 4.4.1, sorry, I'll ask this again. If it says Bootstrap 4.4 or something like that, if it says anything other than Bootstrap 5, can you do a raise hand emote? Okay, I see a thumbs up. And does yours say Bootstrap 4 or something like that? No. Okay, so everybody should have it. Should say Bootstrap 5. I changed this, so we're up to date. So that's good. Okay, good enough. If you do have to change it, you can do that. Just for reference, guys, if you ever are creating a pen and you want to add, like if you want to add reset, you could just go in here and search for Maya reset, and it'll add it right in, and you save it, and then it'll add it into the pen you're working with. Even notice it changed some of the formatting. I don't want that. I'm just going to make sure I have the reset. I'm going to delete that. And you can always just close it without changing anything. There we go. Okay, so, all right, let's get this ball rolling. So in this case, what we have is we have a bunch of tasks that we want to get done. We're not going to be touching the CSS, minimize the CSS, minimize the JavaScript. We don't need any of those. This is purely HTML. You will not write any CSS. If I see any CSS written, if there's more than like 119 lines or I see any of that written, then we are going to have problems. It'll be a problem with your like you're not allowed to do that. I'll give you a 0 on the assignment. Mitchell.
Sorry, I was pulling it up. I just missed where you're putting the Bootstrap thing for.
Oh, it should be good if you just got the pen, but I'll show you again under settings here.
Yep.
And then make sure it's on CSS.
Okay.
And scroll to the bottom. It should say Bootstrap 5 because you forked it from mine.
Okay.
I just noticed we had to fix that last time, but that's good. And if it says 5, you're good to go. All right. So again, guys, don't write any CSS. This is purely HTML. Just minimize the JavaScript and the CSS ones. Don't touch it. I'm going to check if I see any CSS in here, guys. There's no need. We're all good. All right. Mute. There we go. Okay. So let's talk about the first one. So the first one, we're talking about buttons, right? It wants to make 2 particular buttons. I have no problem if you guys want to have Get Bootstrap open and go do that as well at the same time. But what we're going to do here, the first one is use the Bootstrap classes to style the buttons as shown in the picture below. So we have 2 buttons. One of them is this one of them is that one. So what do we want to do here? We'll start with the first one, button 1. We're adding classes. So I'm going to say class equals, and then it's going to want to do buttons, right? So anytime we have any buttons whatsoever, what's the first thing we want to remember about that? What do we add to a button? In order to make it into a button, we have to give all classes the matching class of button, right? BTN means this is going to be a button. Watch what happens over here. It now takes on the general look and feel, but what's it missing? It's missing the theme. So we can, this one here, the color of this one is primary, right? BTN dash primary. So BTN means it's going to be a button. I want to have a look and feel of button, and BTN primary is the theme. We want it to be a primary colored button, right? That's the one we want there. So the same should roughly handle true for the button for button number 2. So let's start with that. So we know it has to have BTN. What's going to be the theme for the second button? Does anybody know? You can go ahead and look on getbootstrap.com. Button outline success. Yeah, because we know it's going to be BTN dash something. And the color is green, so it's probably going to be success, but this one happens to be an outline button. So BTN dash outline dash success. And when we do that, it should give us our nice success button. Now I'm going to add this. The colors are a little bit different than what's shown here. It'll just be a little bit different in some cases. That's okay. All right, so we have our buttons. So that should help to outline what we're doing for our buttons. That was terrible. All right. Any questions about the first activity? Okay, let's move on. Second task. Now, as I make changes on the right, it's going to constantly be pushing these guys back up to the top. That's just the way that the CodePen works. I can't change that. So let's see, we're on task number 2. What we want to do is we want to use Bootstrap classes to style the alert box as shown in the picture below. Okay, so it is an alert box, so we should know we're in task 2. We should know that we have to add a class to the paragraph. What do we want to do here? Remember, it's a lot like a button, right? We want to do a style, or we want to do a the function and then the style, right? So what are we adding for our 2 classes for activity number 2? It's very similar to button. Yeah, we start out by saying it's going to be an alert. Okay, so I say alert, and we see this will change a little bit in appearance because there we go. And it's now getting ready for our theme. This is a red one. So what do you guys think it's going to be? Alert dash. If green is success, red is, yeah, danger, right? All right, there we go. So we're able to get these little bits in here. Okay, I'm happy with that. It looks like it's bold. I'm fine with just the way it is. We'll move forward. We'd have to do some overriding there. Okay, let's move to activity number 3. Okay, any questions about number 2? All right, moving on to activity number 3, information desk. So this one is going to be, we're going to be looking largely at coloring. Okay, so again, we'll go back on the paragraph here. There's a couple of things we want to do. In task number 3, I want to change the background color. I'm also going to have to go from a black text to a white text, and I want to make it bold. Those are the 3 things I want to do. How do I change the background color to be that nice green? What's the what am I looking for in that case? If I want to change the background of any color or the background of any element, I can just say BG dash, right? Do we happen to remember what this color is going to be? Info. Yeah, BG info. Okay, the colors are a little off. That's because it's just they updated in time. Okay, but that's okay. Now we have to make the font bold, and we have to change the color to white. So those are the next 2 things. What are we going to use for those couple of classes there? Anyone? All right, Jessica, you're on it. I don't know if no one else is beating you to it or anyone's just waiting for the answers, but you guys are all, you can all feel free to pitch in. That's, you know, we're doing this together, guys. All right, text dash white, that'll change it to a white text. Okay, there we go. And then in order to make it bold, right, we have to add something else, right? We could go in here and we could say, I want to say strong, but we're going to actually be, we're actually going to be changing or adding classes to do this. So using Bootstrap classes, how would I make this text to be bold? Right, FW bold. Yeah, you got it. Font weight dash bold. And we should see it changes. There's some other ones we could use, bolder and things like that as well, but that I think is good. The color is a little off. Unfortunately, that's the way it goes, but this is what we're looking for. Great. BG info, so allows us to change the background color of this element. Text white, so we can read it ish. And FW bold changes it to a bold, the font weight to bold. Okay, and the last of our visual stuff. So onto task 4. This one is, we have an H1 tag, right? And the H1 tag will automatically style it to look like an H1. There it is. But we want to be bigger and a little bit lighter, thinner in text, right? So we have to give this a class that changes the default look of the H1. So there's a heading text that we can do to change this. Does anybody know what that class is? Display text. You guys got it. Yeah, we can use display, and there's many of them. Let's just see what that looks like. Class equals, we can use display dash 4, for example. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, sorry, not 4, 3. Should change. Yeah, there's 4. We got it changing in size, but in this case, I'm going to make it bigger. So we'll say 1. There we go. It's just a way of changing the default of the H1 to a different first level heading, right? A different look. The H1 semantically, Google or any a screen reader knows that H1 is the most important heading on the page, but now we can change the visual of it as well, still maintaining some hierarchy. It looks important, but it doesn't look like a standard H1. So it's kind of nice. Okay, guys, we are moving on to task number 5. Now, task number 5 and on, 5 through 8 are all layout things. Okay, so these are all things we just played with, so we should be pretty comfortable with it. So in this one, what we have is 5 different classes or 5 different divs, and we want to lay them out. So we're going to be using column structures in here to lay these out. Now, knowing that this is a 12-column grid system, okay, and knowing that it's based on flex so we can wrap it, what are we going to add to each one of these? Let's start with the first 3. How do we create a 3-column grid out of these divs? Yeah, it's 12 divided by 4, right? Or 3 rather, which is 4, because this one's going to be 4, the second one will be 4, and the third one will be 4. So that's all we have to add. Class equals call-4, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy that in so I don't have to, there we go. Give that a second. There, and we're able to get that little portion done, right? So now that leaves columns 4 and 5, which should be fairly straightforward, right? Knowing that this is a 12-column grid system, how are we going to treat these ones, these last 2, number 4 and 5? Column 6, you guys got it. Fairly straightforward, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. So it's all just about division, how many times we can divide by 12. Okay, so let's take a look at the next one, number 6. There's a couple of ways to accomplish this. Now, remember, guys, there's all kinds of ways to accomplish different things. But looking at number 6, we want to set these guys up in this kind of a way, right? So, what do you guys think? What's one way that we can get them to look like this? We know we have to change the column sizes, right? They're all going to be certain columns, wherever, but all column sizes. But what's one way we can accomplish this? Yep, offsets is definitely one way we can do. We could apply offsets to equal amounts here to push it in. Is there another way we can do this? We went over it in the slides, right? Justify content. Yeah. So again, multiple ways we can do it. We can justify content. So we can say, all right, these two are going to be, whatever, everything, the row is going to be aligned center. Okay. Or we can use offsets. I want to use offsets because I think it's that's, it's a nice way to handle it right now. So let's try that. So the first 2 don't have any offsets, right? It's going to be the same as we did before. They're going to be 50% across all the way. So we don't have to worry with that. So it's going to be a column of 6 and a column of 6. Okay, so remember, we're in stack number 6 here. We're applying 50% columns for each one. There we go, no problem, right? So now we have to get a little more careful about it. As we move down, we can see that these are here, but there's also space left over. And in this case, we want to probably just use the highest amount that'll leave us space left over. So which is probably like a 10 of them or something, right? So what do you guys think? What are we gonna add in here to make this work? Specifically on the third one, what are we looking to add here? Call 5, offset 1. Let's see how that looks. Call 5, offset 1. And that means this one needs a call 5 as well, right? Okay, let's go see what that looks like and explain why that works, right? Just for anyone who may be confused. So we have our 3 and a 4. So what we have is two columns and sets of columns on these row are going to be 5 and 5. That's 10. That leaves us 12 left over, right? Or 2 left over rather. So that's 1 on the end on this side, 1 on the end of the other side. Since we only have to push the first one to the right because we use left to right, then in that case, then we only offset the first one by 1, and that'll give us the appearance of being centered. We just cut the remainder of whatever the columns are in half, and then we apply that number to the first one. It's fairly straightforward. Okay, and that leaves us the very last number, the very last one we have. Okay, that looks like it's probably a 6, right? Class equals call 6. Now, how would I make this centered? Yeah, offset 3. You guys got it. Offset 3. Perfect. And once again, the reason that this works is because if we take 6, then we take the remainder and cut it in half. The remainder is 12 columns. So we've used up 6. On number 5 here, we've used up half. That leaves 6 left over. We just cut that in half because we need half on one side, half on the other. And that's our offset. It pushes us over by half, and that'll leave the other half on the other side. Does that make sense? You guys see how that works? Anybody confused about that? The other side of that, guys, we could not use offsets, and we could just use we could just center it using justify. But offsets is something we see a lot of. Let's move on to stack number 7. This one is a little bit different. We're still going to be using offsets, but it's a little more complicated. Okay. So each one of these, it looks like a col 6. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to start with just by adding, I'm going to highlight the col 6 and copy it. I'm going to add that to each one of these for stack 7. 2, 3, 4, there we go. And that'll put them all in the right size. Okay, we see now they're all ordered in a weird order now. So now what we've got to do is for each one of these columns, we have to add, or most of these columns probably, we have to add an offset just to make sure we understand that concept, right? So the first one, are we going to add an offset?
Yep, by 1.
By 1, that's right. Yeah, because we just, again, we're just pushing it over by 1. You guys get the concept here. Offset 1 for the first one. Now it's made easy for us here because we can see 3 and 4 are they're cut in half. There's going to be no offset for these guys. So we can see where the middle point is, which makes it easier for us for number 2, right? We can see if this is 6, if the offset of 6 is going to be right here, it means we're 1 short of that, which means this offset looks like it's probably 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So let's try that out. Offset 5. That looks about right. Did you see how I came to that conclusion? It's just a visual acuity thing. I just look and say, okay, well, if this is 6, this must be less than that, right? So 5 looks about right to me. All right. And of course, we see the exact same treatment for the last one. This is going to be offset of 3 for the last option. All right. That makes sense, guys? Okay. So then the very last one we have here is ordering. Okay. We're going to be using ordering to accomplish this. Okay. And we in different sizes. So I'm going to do the first one just to show you what it would look like. So the very first one, we know that it's going to be full 12 columns, and we want to go at the end. There's 5 of them here. So I'm going to do this. Class equals, it's going to be 12 columns, and it's going to be the last one of 5. There we go. Now, just like in Flexbox, you only need to use, really technically, you should only have to do this on 2 or 3 to change them, like 2 is in the same spot and, so on and so forth, just changing a few of these. But you can go ahead and add a number to each one if it makes it easier for you. I think you guys get the point. So I'll let you guys handle this. And then when you're done, just do a raise hand. Okay. And that way I can know when to continue on. Some of you will find it easier to do the column sizes first, and some of you will find it easier to move the structure around first. There's no right or wrong way. You'll find practice will make perfect. You'll get there when you get there, right? But there's, those are 2 different ways to handle it. I typically would go through, personally, I would probably go and do the ordering first. But that's, it's a personal choice. We have 2 that figured it out so far. I got thumbs up, Nicholas. So I'm assuming maybe that means you have it. So that's good. So we got, looks like 3. Once you get it, guys, do a raised hand, please. All right, well, we're starting to filter in here. Remember, each one of these is going to be changing a column size and an order size, or an order amount. Okay. Number 5 and number 2 look easy. They're both a column size of 6, right? So we could probably start by just putting those in. That's why I can do column size, or we can order them, whatever you think is going to be the best. There you go. Starting to get to it now. Still got about half of you guys working on it. Oh, it's coming together now. A little less than half. A little more than half still working. That's okay. We'll give it just a few more minutes. If anyone has questions, you can pop them in the chat. Once we get over the halfway point, we can start. All right, yeah, we're getting there now. All right. So let's put these together and see where we're at with it. So you guys can lower your hands. Thank you very much. So I prefer myself to do ordering first because we can see it very clearly. You might prefer to do sizing. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to start with sizing, I guess, just because I can quickly see which ones need to be 6 and which ones need to be what from there. 12 is done. So I see that 5 and 2, so the 5th one and the 2nd one need to be 6 apart because I can see that's the halfway. It's a visual thing. So I'm going to do that. Class 6 and column 6. And then that means number 4, right, is going to be a little longer than 6. And we'll use a remainder for 3. So if number 4 is a little longer than 6, it's probably going to be 7, right? So I'll say the remainder of that is going to be 7. And then I just have to use the remainder here on the 3rd one, right? So we have 12 minus 7, which is going to give us 5. So that'll give us our sizing. And that was just a simple thing to do, just based on what we have here. Okay, so now what do we have? 1, 2, yeah. Now comes the ordering. Okay, it looks odd now, but if we look, we can follow down. 1 is 12. That's perfect. The 2nd one is supposed to be 6, which I would agree with that. The 3rd one is supposed to be it's a little less than halfway here, so 5, yeah. And the 4th one is a little more than halfway, so 7 is good. And the 5th one, again, column 6. So our columns should be all good to go. Now it's just the ordering, right? So the 2nd one that we don't have to add an order in here, right? We could, I'm going to, just so you guys can see, but we don't have to do that. We could we could just push the things around that we need to, same as flex. Remember, it's not about a weight as much as it's about moving things out of an existing order. But that's the 2nd one. So we've got that. That's the 2nd one is fine where it is. So the 3rd one we want to move down here, it's going to be the 4th, right? We're just ordering along. Order, this is going to be 4. Okay. The 4th one, we're going to make it number 3. 1, 2, 3. So the 4th one goes order -3. And that means the last one, call 6, now becomes order 1. We could also use order first and last as well, but for the time being, that's good. I like to make sure it's all set. There we go. And as you see, we didn't even need to do that. Everything else had ordering, so it was fine. Right? Okay, we have a question. Rob, do you have a question, or is the hand just up? Rob, is there a question?
No, sorry, I just stepped away. My hand's just still up.
Okay, no problem. Yep. All right, so that should cover it. 5, 2, 4, 3, 1 off blast. Okay, and that's it, guys. So hopefully that was helpful. These little code pen exercises are usually pretty handy to kind of just get a quick shot of what we're trying to accomplish. So right now, submit this, get it done. Remember, guys, this is hanging by your bootstraps. This is the exercise, right? This is under in-class exercise, hanging by your bootstraps. You have until midnight to submit it, but submit it to this one. I just need the URL right there. Right? It shouldn't say IMD in it. Make sure you submit the URL, get that done as soon as possible. The sooner you get that in, the sooner I can get it graded. And with that said, Make sure, please make sure you submit to the right spot. If you submit to the wrong spot, I can't grade it. I just can't grade it. All right. I mean, I can, but I won't. Okay. So make sure you submit it to the correct spot. That's that for that. Now, what do we have here? I think that's it for this class. Is there any questions about what we covered today? Did you guys find this useful, the bootstrap, seeing how it all came about full circle? You guys, beginning of this class, were like, oh, there's new code we have to learn, and now we don't have to use any of it because we could use bootstrap. And it's not for everyone. Some people are going to prefer being able to go in and use bootstrap or grid, right? But bootstrap itself, yeah, this really helps out, right? And you can even use this idea to create your own basic grid system going forward, right? You could say, I want to do something simple. I want to base it in 4s. And you could build a structure. Call 1 is a width of 25%. Call 2 is a width of 50%. Call 3 is, and you could build very basic grid systems if you wanted to do that. Not really necessary with Flex and grid, but you could do that. When I learned how to do this stuff in course, they made us build all the math out for a 12-column grid system with gutters and everything. So it wasn't fun, but we figured it out, right? This is really powerful stuff. Okay, so I hope you have that. You have 2 weeks to really hand in the other assignment, which should be plenty of time to do that, including work labs for both. So that should be good. Now, the very last thing before I let you guys dip on out of here, I want to say this is the last working class we have. There's going to be the next work labs, probably for the bulk of you. You may be here, but we won't be really interacting the same way. So I want to tell you guys, thank you so much. You guys, honestly, I can't express to you how much I needed a really good group of students. And you guys were an awesome group of students. I know I was a hard marker, and I do that because it's important when you get into industry that I'm giving you the best tools. If as your professor, you're paying me to teach you, right? You're paying us to teach you. And so if we don't teach you the best practices and give you give you an insight into what it's like in industry, then we're doing you a disservice. You're not getting your money's worth, right? So you guys have been absolutely outstanding. I think you guys should really give yourselves a pat in the back. I am so proud of you guys. Look how far you came from when we started, right? When we go back and we look at the overview and you guys came in here, we're talking about Cascade and learning Flex again. We said, oh, I know all this stuff already. Look how far you've come. You guys should be patting yourselves on the back for the hard work you've done. Now it's just applying it all at the end, okay? And so, yes, I'm a hard marker, but this is your time now, okay? So if you need me, email me. If you have questions, email me. We'll come to the work labs, do what we got to do. I learned a lot from teaching you guys about how to be a better teacher, and I hope you guys learned a little bit about what the expectations in this course are and in this industry. Thank you so much, guys, for the compliment. I appreciate that. With that said, I'm leaving tomorrow to go for a much needed little trip out into Algonquin Park to do some canoe camping with some friends. And I hope that you guys have a great weekend. I'm gonna be completely off grid come Thursday evening. Okay. I'm going to try and get everything graded as quickly as possible. If I miss something, I can't get it done. I will be back on Sunday night or Monday night. Hopefully I'll be back. Oh my goodness. But I'll be back. Trust me, I'm an experienced camper. So if you can't reach me over the weekend, I'm just not around. Okay. Other than that, guys, it's much needed camping break. Look at all those compliments. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. There are some outstanding emails from some of you. I will be getting to those today. Yeah, I love web design. It's a lot of fun, especially now you guys know about Bootstrap. It changes everything, right? Okay, guys. I don't want to keep you. I have a class in an hour. Some of you guys have a class in an hour. I want to eat some lunch. It's been my pleasure. It's been literally my pleasure having you guys as students. I am so grateful that you guys were just so great. Thank you. Hope you have a great rest of your semester. I will see you guys next. I'll see you guys next week for our mandatory work lab. And that's it. Yeah, have a great one, guys and gals.
Thanks again, Rob.
Yeah, my pleasure. Honestly, my pleasure. I'm a big nerd. I love this stuff. Have a great one, guys. I'm gonna close off the recording now. I'll get that posted as soon as possible. Take care, guys.